Chapter 25:10. Meng Qingxue suddenly realized that she had asked too much. She immediately shut her mouth and said resentfully, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked about your private matters. It's fine." Chu Ho said, "I don't know how to answer this question because I don't know who the father is." "How can that be?" Meng Qingxue frowned curiously. She was more concerned about this topic because she might have found a kindred spirit, a single mother, an unmarried pregnancy, living alone with a child. Chu Ho's characteristics were too similar to hers. It was as if he was a projection of her. Perhaps this woman had a more complicated past. However, Chu Ho's words, "Because I don't know who the father is," she was completely shocked. How could he not know who the father was? Chu Ho saw that her eyes were full of curiosity, but he didn't seem to be disgusted. He smiled and said casually, "This matter is complicated. We'll talk about it later. I'm going to change first. Just wait for me here." "Okay." Meng Qingxue sat on the chair obediently and waited. When Chu Ho walked out after changing into his casual clothes, Meng Qingxue immediately stood up. "Let's go back to the inn." "Eh?" Meng Qingxue was a little surprised, but she heard Chu Ho say, "Some of your clothes are still there, right? Plus your deposit, it should be returned." She immediately said, "Actually, it's fine if you don't return it." "Is it really fine?" Chu Ho stopped in his tracks and looked her up and down unhurriedly. Suddenly, he smiled and said meaningfully, "Since you're pregnant and want to give birth to the child, you need to spend money on food and clothes. Naturally, you have to save some money." Meng Qingxue was shocked. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything in the end. She followed him silently. Chu Ho drove a motorcycle. He started the engine and put on the helmet. Then, he patted the back seat and said, "Get on." Meng Qingxue got on. "Hug me. The wind is strong. It's better to hide behind me. Aren't you cold?" "I'm used to it. I have a good physique." "Okay." Chu Ho drove her back to the inn and took back the deposit and clothes. The inn owner also felt embarrassed about what had happened. Moreover, he gave Chu Ho face, so he gave her the money for the room. On the way back, Meng Qingxue asked curiously, "Officer Chu." "Just call me Sister Chu." "How did you know that I'm pregnant?" She didn't mention anything about it from the beginning to the end. "How did she find out?" "Chu," he said, "on the way here, when you were sitting in the front passenger seat, I saw you lowering your head and silently stroking your lower abdomen. Only pregnant women would do such a thing." Meng Qingxue was stunned for a moment. Then, she realized what was going on. She couldn't help but admire her keen observation. "You were so observant? Where's the child's father?" Chu Ho suddenly asked, "Why are you alone? Isn't the child's father with you?" Meng Qingxue's face suddenly showed a look of disappointment. Then, she smiled bitterly and said, "My father doesn't want this child, but I want it so." Chapter 25:11. Meng Qingxue was surprised by her analytical ability. She was stunned for a moment before she said, "I really can't bear to do that. This is our flesh and blood, and also my first child. I can't abandon him. Maybe it's because of my maternal instincts. Just imagine how painful it would be to have an abortion and the separation of flesh and blood." "Did that man let you down?" Chu Ho suddenly asked. Meng Qingxue's gaze was a little empty. She lowered her eyelashes silently and suddenly laughed. "It's not that I let him down. It's just that from the beginning to the end, it was more of my wishful thinking. I realized that I shouldn't continue to be obsessed with him since I've woken up from my dream. Now I just want to rent a small house in a small, nameless city, peacefully give birth to the child, and raise him. There aren't many vacant houses for rent in Yen City because the people here are more conservative. They're not very willing to rent out their houses." Chu Ho changed the topic. "However, if you don't mind, you can stay at my place." "Your place?" Chu Ho said, "I bought a house last year. Although it's not big, there's an extra room. If you don't mind, you can stay there." "Really?" Meng Qingxue was overjoyed. She didn't expect to find a stable place to live so quickly. More importantly, the person who provided the house was the police, so at least her personal safety was guaranteed. How about the rent? There's no need to pay rent, right? Anyway, the house is empty, and now there's a layer of dust on it. Meng Qingxue was dissatisfied. The rent should be paid. Since I'm living in your house, then I should pay you rent. There's no doubt about that. If you insist on giving me 300 yuan, then I'll take it. The rent here isn't expensive. Meng Qingxue said, Okay. After a moment of silence, Chuho suddenly said, It's hard to raise a child alone. As a single mother, she would be questioned and ridiculed from all sides. The cost of food, clothing, and all the expenses would be like a mountain pressing down on her shoulders. Yes, but I understand how you feel. Because when I found out that I was pregnant, even if I didn't have any memory of the child's father, the innate maternal instinct in a woman's bones seemed to awaken overnight, and I was indeed extremely reluctant to part with him. She has no memory of the child's father? Meng Qingxue was shocked. How is that possible? Don't you know how the child came about? Chuho looked straight ahead and said expressionlessly, 5 years ago, when I woke up, I was in a homestay in Yen City. Yen City is close to the sea. They all said that I was fished out from the sea. When they found me, I was lying on a large wooden board and had fainted. Fortunately, my limbs were frozen stiff, so I didn't fall into the sea. When I woke up, I had almost no memory. I didn't even know my own name. The name Chu Ho was given to me by myself. No memory at all? Meng Qingxue asked carefully. Is it because of amnesia? Chapter 25:12. You don't have any memories? Meng Qingxue asked carefully. Is it because of amnesia? Chuho said, Yeah. The back of my head seems to have been hit by a hard object. It's bleeding. The doctor said that I don't have any memory of my past. It's probably because my head was hit. Your head was hit. Meng Qingxue was a little surprised. Don't tell me you don't have any memory of what happened before? Yeah. I don't even remember who I am. Even my name, my past, my background, and who my family is, I don't have any memory of it. Chu Ho paused and said, The doctor said that this is a temporary amnesia and that there's a chance that I'll regain my memory in the future. But even after 5 years, I still can't remember a single thing about my past. Meng Qingxue was a little surprised. At the same time, she felt that it was a little unbelievable. When I regained my consciousness, my mind was blank. I tried hard to remember, but the doctor said that it's probably because I'm in a very unfamiliar city. If I can find the place where I used to live, I might have a chance to regain my memory. Chu Ho continued. However, the most troublesome thing is that I don't even remember where my home is. Then you must feel very helpless, right? Meng Qingxue was silent for a moment and said, If I had forgotten anything and went to a very unfamiliar place, I would definitely feel very lost. Even if I'm lost, I still have to try my best to survive. Chu Ho told her what happened next. After her body recovered, she left the hospital. Because she had nowhere to go, she settled down in the village. Because she didn't have any identification, the village chief went to the relevant departments to investigate the missing person. But there was no result. The village chief felt sorry for her being alone, so he let her stay at his house and settled down. 8 months later, the child was born. It was a healthy little boy. The village chief immediately used his connections to register the child's DNA on the internet. That way, even if there was a clue, they could quickly investigate the ins and outs of her identity. Before she got this job, she helped the village chief and his family do some work in the fields. However, she accidentally discovered the hidden potential in her body. Once, at night, she rode her bike to the county to help the village head and his family purchase some daily necessities. At that time, the entertainment industry in the county had just started to rise. On the streets of the town center, there were many sauna shops, karaoke shops, and small bars. On her way home, she happened to meet a group of hooligans who were pestering a lone woman. Those hooligans seemed to be drunk and were touching the woman. She couldn't stand it and went to help them. Unexpectedly, one of the men who seemed to be the leader of the group took out a dagger and waved it at her as if he was threatening her. Seeing that the dagger was about to cut into her body, She leaped into the air out of instinct and did a suave roundhouse kick. The man fell to the ground and fainted in an instant, losing consciousness. A group of people rushed up. In the end, there were 3 to 5 burly men, but within a few minutes, they were easily knocked to the ground by her. Each and every one of them was obedient. Chapter 25:13. Coincidentally, the chief of the police station and the village chief were cousins. Thus, in the end, by a freak combination of factors, she entered the police station to work. Although she did not enter the establishment and her income was not high, her life gradually became better. Chu-ho said, "I don't think much of my past now. It doesn't matter if I can't get my memories back. Perhaps they aren't good memories, so it's fine if I forget them. The doctor said that it might be selective amnesia. My instincts don't want those memories, so my brain temporarily deleted them. Hence, I chose to go with the flow." When Meng Qingxue heard this, she felt a little complicated. She was inexplicably envious of her. If she could, she also wanted to lose those memories of the past. They were all memories that she did not want to recall. The bits and pieces of her childhood, the scenes with Mu Yanqing, were of course blissful and happy, but most of them were sadness, pain, and numbness. After half an hour's drive, they arrived at Chu-ho's house in no time. Chu-he's house was located in a village. It was an ordinary household with a single door, but the house wasn't big. It looked like it had been renovated. The interior decoration also looked very new, but it was renovated not long ago. It wasn't as dilapidated as she had imagined on the way here. The house had snow-white walls and a tiled floor. Although the furnishings were simple, it gave off a sense of belonging. It was obvious that Chu-ho was a woman who knew how to live a good life. Meng Qingxue had just stepped into the house with Chu-ho when she heard hurried footsteps coming from the corridor. From the sound of the footsteps, a child of about 5 or 6 years old bounced down the stairs. Then, a clean and delicate little boy appeared in front of her. Meng Qingxue was shocked. She was probably surprised because this little boy was really too beautiful. He had snow-white skin, clear black and white eyes, exquisite facial features that were still childish, and the outline of his face was watery and cute. His eyebrows were especially beautiful. He was dressed very simply, just like the other children in the village. He wore a thick cotton-padded jacket and a pair of sports shoes on his feet. When he walked, they shone brightly, making him look very childlike. "Mom!" Little Bean excitedly pounced on her and threw himself into her arms. Chu-ho said with pity and blame, "Why didn't you slow down when you went downstairs? What if you fell?" Meng Qingxue, who was standing at the side, could not help but feel warmth in her heart. The Chu-ho of today was no longer as dignified and righteous as when she faced the 2 hooligans. Nor was she as cool and handsome as when she was in uniform. She gently held the little girl in her arms, her whole body exuding the unique radiance of a mother. "Are there any good girls at home?" "Yes. The baby is very obedient at home. He went to bed early in the morning and didn't peek at the TV." The little bean said in all seriousness. His childish voice was innocent and unaffected. However, his words revealed that he was trying to hide something. If he went to bed early in the morning, he would still be wearing sneakers. He must have secretly watched TV and hadn't slept yet. His little brain was so innocent and cute that she did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Chu-ho did not expose him. Instead, she scratched the tip of his nose and deliberately said fiercely, "Why did you come down when you were asleep? Did Mommy wake you up?" Chapter 25:14. Little Bean said solemnly, "Otherwise, when Mommy opens the door, the house will be empty. She'll be very lonely." "Good boy." Chu-ho paused, then carried him to Meng Qingxue and said, "Come." "Xiao Bao," greeted Auntie. Little Bean looked at Chu-ho curiously, then at Meng Qingxue. Curious and surprised, he asked, "Who is this auntie? Is she Mommy's guest?" "Yes. From today onwards, this auntie will be staying with us. From now on, she'll be our guest. Xiao Bao, you have to be good. Don't be naughty and cause trouble for auntie." "Why would I?" Meng Qingxue retorted. "How can I cause trouble? I like children. Besides, I'm the one who's causing trouble for you by staying here. Chu-ho looked at her warmly and said, since you're staying here from now on, let's not treat each other like strangers. Perhaps it was because of their similar experiences, but when the two women looked at each other, there was a sense of mutual appreciation. Meng Qingxue walked in front of her and bent down slightly. She asked Little Bean, what's your name? Little Bean's breathing suddenly quickened. Perhaps it was because he was shy, or perhaps it was because he was embarrassed. Looking at such a delicate and beautiful face in front of him, with a pair of beautiful eyes looking at him, and long eyelashes fluttering, he was so nervous that he stuttered, Auntie, hello. I'm Xiao Bao Chu. Xiao Bao? What a cute name. From now on, you can call me Auntie Qingxue. Okay? Auntie Qingxue. Xiao Bao Chu's eyes suddenly lit up. He asked shyly, hello, Auntie Qingxue. Your name? It's exactly the same as Sister Qingxue's name on TV. Meng Qingxue widened her eyes in curiosity. She was baffled by his words and could not figure out what he meant for a moment. Chu-ho immediately explained, last year, there was a fantasy drama that was very popular on TV. It was called something like The Legend of Ancient Sword. The female lead was called Qingxue. I see. Xiao Bao Chu suddenly struggled to get down from Chu-ho and ran to the table. Then, he carefully took a clean cup and took out a box of tea from the cabinet. He put a small handful of tea leaves into the cup, then ran to the kitchen, poured some hot water, and carefully placed the cup on the coffee table in front of the sofa. Then, the little guy ran to Meng Qingxue enthusiastically. He carefully pinched the corner of her shirt and tugged slightly. He said shyly, Auntie Xiao, Xiao Bao made you a cup of hot tea. The weather is cold. Drink some hot tea to warm your body. Meng Qingxue was extremely surprised. She looked up at Chu-ho and was a little surprised. You're so young, but you're already so sensible? Auntie, this is what I should do. It's because this is your first time here. You're my guest. Xiao Bao Chu said seriously. The little guy's enthusiasm made Meng Qingxue feel a little embarrassed. She walked over and sat down on the sofa. Xiao Bao Chu stood beside her bashfully and looked at her eagerly. He suddenly reminded her, Auntie, be careful, it's hot. Chapter 25:15. Xiao Bao saw with his own eyes that she picked up the cup and took a sip. Suddenly, she turned around without a word and ran upstairs. Meng Qingxue was dumbfounded. She put down the teacup in a daze and looked at Chu-ho in confusion. She asked curiously, he's so obedient. Did he run upstairs to sleep by himself? That can't be. Chu-ho said, I don't know where this guy gets so much energy from. He's always restless at night. I have to coax him before he'll sleep. Then Chu-ho glanced at the corridor and smiled knowingly. He's probably tidying up your room. Tidying up my room? Yeah. There's a guest room upstairs that's usually reserved for emergencies. He guessed that you'd be staying in that guest room, so he probably took a broom and a mop to tidy it up. Meng Qingxue was even more speechless. He already knows how to do housework. Yeah, although he doesn't sweep the floor clean, he's very energetic. There's no need to go through so much trouble. I can actually do it myself. Meng Qingxue said as she ran upstairs. When she entered the guest room, she saw Xiao Bao struggling to hold a mop and mopping seriously. Under the light, she could see that his forehead was covered in sparkling and fine beads of sweat. He was mopping seriously and was working especially hard. Xiao Bao, Auntie knows how to drag. It's already so late. Why don't you sleep early? How can I let Auntie drag? I'm the little master. It's my duty. After Xiao Bao finished speaking, he started mopping again with all his might. Meng Qingxue stood at the door and watched with a smile. She couldn't help but lower her head and gently caress her belly. She thought to herself, how nice would it be if the baby in my belly grew up to be so sensible and well-behaved? That would save her a lot of trouble. After the floor was mopped, Chu-ho also packed up and came upstairs. He immediately asked, Xiao Bao, are you done mopping the floor? Xiao Bao walked over with a mop in his arms. He stood in front of her and saluted her with his little hand. Like a soldier, he said firmly, Yes, Mom, it's done. Then go to bed early. Xiaobao suddenly chuckled a few times, then bashfully moved to Chuho's side and asked carefully, Mom, seeing that I'm so obedient, can you let me watch another cartoon tonight? It's so late and you're still watching cartoons? Chuho's face immediately darkened and he said sternly, Not allowed. Go to bed early, okay? Is it really impossible? Chu Xiaobao hugged her thigh pitifully. Looking up at her, she said aggrievedly, Just one episode. It was just one episode. Xiaobao took a nap in the afternoon, so I'm not sleepy now. But Mom is tired. After a day of work, I'm very sleepy now. Don't you want to sleep with Mom? Upon hearing Chuho's words, Xiaobao didn't insist anymore. Pursing his lips, he nodded and said, Then Xiaobao will sleep with Mom. That's a good boy. As Chuho said this, he looked up at Meng Qingxue and said, It's late. Go to bed early. Okay. This guest room has a bathroom and hot water. Wash up and rest early. As Chuho said this, he closed the door for her. Meng Qingxue placed her luggage on the table and then looked around the room. Chapter 25:16. The furnishings in the house were simple. There was a 2-meter bed, a 5-door wardrobe, a table, and an LCD TV. She walked to the bathroom. Although it was not big, it had everything she needed. There was a shower, a toilet, and a sink. She turned on the tap and hot water immediately came out. Meng Qingxue hung her clothes in the wardrobe. She did not bring many clothes with her. When she was unpacking her luggage, a photo accidentally fell out. She picked it up and glanced at it. It was a selfie of her and Mu Yanqing. She was the one who had dragged Mu Yanqing to take this photo. He was initially unwilling, but she had to act coquettishly before he reluctantly agreed. She pulled the man, who was more than 1.8 meters tall, into the small studio and reluctantly took a photo with her. After that, he refused to take another selfie. In the photo, Mu Yanqing's face was stiff. He reluctantly curved the corners of his lips, looking a little reluctant. Meng Qingxue stared silently at the photo for a long time. Unknowingly, her eyes turned red. Drops of crystal-clear tears fell on the photo and stained it little by little. She pursed her lips and held back her tears. She silently wiped them away. Then, she hardened her heart and gritted her teeth. She pinched the corner of the photo and tore it into pieces in a fit of anger. She hardened her heart and forced herself not to piece together her broken feelings. She grabbed the scattered remains of the photo, rolled them up, and threw them into the wastepaper basket. Meng Qingxue had already taken a shower at the hotel. Hence, she washed her face, brushed her teeth, and went to bed. The next day, when she woke up, Chuho had already woken up early. He sent Xiaobao to kindergarten and returned home. Meng Qingxue handed over a sum of money wrapped in an envelope. There's more than 3,000 yuan here. I may have to stay here for a while. Sorry for the trouble. Chuho did not refuse and accepted it. Based on their interactions last night, she had a good understanding of Meng Qingxue's character. Meng Qingxue was more principled and strong-willed, which was similar to her in this aspect. If she insisted on not accepting the gift, she would feel a little uncomfortable. After accepting the rent, Chuho thought to herself that she could allocate a portion of the money to buy some tonics for her to nourish her body. She could tell that Meng Qingxue's body was not in good condition and needed to be nursed back to health. Fortunately, although Yen City was small, it was a place with beautiful scenery and was very livable. Every household had their own farmland. Therefore, most of the residents in Yen City were self-sufficient. The vegetables and rice they ate were all grown from their own fields. They were very healthy. Meng Qingxue suddenly asked, "Are there any simple jobs in the village? I don't have much money, so I want to do some manual work. Do you know how to do it?" "I've been doing manual work since I was young." Meng Qingxue's family was not considered rich since she was young. Hence, she helped her family do manual work since she was young. She sewed clothes, knitted sweaters, and knitted scarves. Sometimes she would do some manual work. Chu-ho thought hard for a while and said, "There's a workshop in the village that specializes in making lanterns." "Lanterns?" "Yes. They make handmade lanterns in the shape of various animals and sell them in the market. One lantern costs 15 yuan. If you're fast enough, you can make 10 in a day and earn more than 100 yuan. You can try. More than 100 yuan. Chapter 25:17. Sure. My handiwork is very meticulous. Meng Qingxue was greatly excited. Can you introduce me to it? Of course. By the way, don't you have to work in the afternoon? I'm on the night shift this week and work at 7 p.m. I'll ask around for you in the afternoon and get back to you. Okay. In the afternoon, Chu Ho returned home looking very happy. Qingxue, I've asked around for you. The workshop isn't far from here. It's only a few hundred meters away. However, I was wrong before. It only costs 10 yuan to make a lantern. Are you willing to do it? 10 yuan is good too. It's a lot. But don't force yourself too much. After all, you're pregnant. Are you having a bad pregnancy reaction now? A little, I guess. Chu Ho said, if you're really not feeling well, don't force yourself. I'll help you contact someone later. You can start work tomorrow. They're short of manpower. Okay. As such, she decided to settle down here. Meng Qingxue went to work at the workshop at 8:30 a.m. sharp every day. Even though it was considered work, the atmosphere was relatively peaceful. Unlike the scheming in the workplace in the metropolis, the villagers were simple and warm. They took special care of an outsider like her. She got the hang of it very quickly. At first, it took her 2 hours to make a lantern. However, after she got the hang of it and familiarized herself with it, she could make 5 lanterns in the morning. She returned home at 7 p.m. after dinner. Haven't you found her whereabouts yet? In the office, Mu Yanqing looked at the men in suits standing in a row in front of the table with a displeased expression. On the table was a thick stack of information about Meng Qingxue. Everything about her, from her background to her DNA, was in the file. However, after half a month, he had sent countless people to search for her, but they could not find a single strand of her hair. This woman was too ruthless. She left without leaving a trace. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air. Mu Yanqing hated her so much that he gritted his teeth. The more he loved this woman, the more he hated her. Why did she leave? She left without saying a word after leaving such a message. She made it seem like he was the one who chased her away. Why was he talking to himself like that? Who gave her the right to do so? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. With a cold expression, he picked up the documents on the table and slammed them on the floor. Chairman Mu, please calm down. We've already sent out our best men to search for him. However, to find one person in so many cities was indeed a little tricky. However, if they continued to search, they would definitely be able to find her whereabouts. Don't worry. We will definitely find him for you. The reason why they addressed him as Chairman Mu was that the news of him taking up the position of Dishing Financial Group's CEO had been publicly announced this morning. When Mu Yanqing walked into the Mu Group's building, all the Mu Group's employees addressed him respectfully as Chairman Mu. As for the inheritance ceremony, it would be held in a week's time. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Come in. A woman who looked like a secretary suddenly walked in and reported with a smile. Chairman Mu, Miss Song is looking for you. We have arranged for her to wait for you in the reception room. Chapter 25:18. Miss Song? Which Miss Song? Is your fiancée Miss Song Enya? Mu Yanqing was stunned for a moment as he muttered inwardly. What is she doing here at this time? Just tell her that I'm busy and can't meet her. He was currently feeling frustrated and did not want to be disturbed by that woman. Then, the secretary cautiously said, I'll tell her that you have a meeting to prepare for later. Yes, just say that. The secretary then retreated respectfully. Unexpectedly, a few minutes later, the sound of high heels clicking could be heard from outside the door. Without knocking, Song Enya pushed the door open and rushed in. She said rudely, Meeting? What meeting is so important that even I can't be seen? Mu Yanqing raised his head and frowned, looking displeased. Didn't I say that I'm busy now? Can't you wait until I'm off work? Do you have to avoid me like this? Could it be that, in your eyes, I'm some kind of scourge? Annoyed, Mu Yenqing turned his face away and refused to look at her. I have something to talk to you about. What is it that you have to talk about in the office? We only talk about business in the office and not private matters. She was instantly enraged when she heard this and took a step forward agitatedly. Mu Yenqing, what kind of attitude is this? Listen to me carefully. Song Enya's words came to an abrupt halt as her gaze landed on the scattered papers on the floor. Curiously, she walked forward and picked up one of them, only to see Meng Qingshue's photo on it. It was actually information about Meng Qingxue. Her heart skipped a beat as she felt extremely humiliated. What is this for? Could it be that this man sent people to look for me? Song Enya skimmed through the documents and, in shock, picked up a few more. Glancing through them, she was surprised to find that the investigation had included the hospital. Hospital? What kind of situation would require them to investigate the hospital? Could it be? Song Enya immediately thought of a possibility. This woman is pregnant. Pregnant? Then, isn't this woman a big threat to me? To rich families, a woman's birth was not the biggest threat. The biggest threat came from the child in her stomach. She had plenty of means to make it difficult for this woman to step into the Mu family for the rest of her life. However, the child in her stomach might not be. If she was pregnant and gave birth to the child, once Mu Yenqing found the child and brought it back to the Mu family. The most terrifying thing was that if the child in her stomach was a boy, the threat to her would be infinitely increased. She's pregnant. Song Enya questioned her with the document in her hand. Is she pregnant with your child? Her words were aggressive and extremely sharp. Mu Yenqing was extremely displeased with the way she was questioning him. It was as if she were interrogating a criminal. Therefore, when he spoke, his tone was not that friendly. My matters have nothing to you. You are my fiancé. How can your matters have nothing to do with me? Chapter 25:19. With that, she took a step forward and ordered, You must abort the child in her womb. Who are you to question the Mu family's child? How can you abort it just like that? Song Enya originally thought that with her strong tone and attitude, he would definitely compromise a little in front of her. Unexpectedly, he gave her an order back. No. What? She laughed in anger. Mu Yenqing, don't tell me you're planning to wait for this woman to give birth to the child, and then bring this unknown B*ST*RD back to the Mu family. Unknown B*ST*RD. He sneered and retorted. How can it be an unknown B*ST*RD? The blood of the Mu family is not a B*ST*RD. The child in her womb is my flesh and blood. It's my seed. It's not up to you to decide whether this child stays or goes. Are you so sure that this B*ST*RD is yours? Song Enya provoked him in an extremely sinister manner. Meng Qingxue is a young model. Do you think she's that pure in the filthy entertainment industry? Do you think she's that innocent? Who knows if she's been entangled with other men behind your back? I heard that her circle is very messy. She can sleep for a few nights with just a few tens of thousands of yuan. How can you be so sure that the child in her stomach is yours? Mu Yenqing was thoroughly provoked by her. He slammed the table and stood up abruptly. Pointing at her nose, he rebuked, I've said it before. You have no right to interfere in my affairs. Besides, you're not married yet, so you're not considered a member of the Mu family. What right do you have to tell me what to do? Song Enya, haven't you figured out your identity yet? Song Enya was about to retort when someone knocked on the door again. Mu Yenqing was annoyed and bellowed, Who is it? It's me. A calm voice came from outside the door. Come in. Just as he finished speaking, the door was pushed open and Minyu, who was dressed casually, walked into the office with a stack of reports in his hand. Mu Yenqing looked at him and asked coldly, What's the matter? Master Yenqing. Mu Yenqing cut him off coldly. Are you blind? Didn't you see Mu Group's announcement today? From today onwards, I am officially the CEO of Dishing. According to the rules, you should call me Chairman Mu. In the Mu group, we have to be clear about etiquette, and we have to be clear about who is superior and who is inferior. Minyu shot him a frosty look. Instead of his usual suit, he was dressed in casual attire today. He walked up to Mu Yanqing and nonchalantly tossed a stack of reports on the table. Mu Yanqing glared at him and then followed his action to look at the reports on the table. He asked quizzically, "What's this?" "This is my resignation letter. The Human Resource Department said that my resignation letter needs your approval." After saying that, he put on a nonchalant expression, and his gaze was light and indifferent. "Young Master Yanqing, I've said before that the day you officially succeed your position will be the day I leave the Mu group. I'm here to ask for your resignation." Chapter 25-20. Minyu looked at him with indifference. There was not a hint of reluctance on his face. It was not that he did not have any feelings for the Mu group. From the day he became Mu Yaja's special assistant, he had sworn that he would not leave this place unless the Mu group collapsed. However, since Mu Yaja was no longer with the company, there was no point for him to stay. His loyalty had never been for the Mu group. It was only for Mu Yaja. Song Enya was also stunned. She was no stranger to Minyu. When she first met him, he was merely an administrative assistant by Mu Yaja's side. He was the confidant whom the latter had promoted all the way to the top. He was loyal to Mu Yaja, so she was not surprised to see him resign. Mu Yanqing glared fiercely at his assistant. After sizing him up, he suddenly sneered and said contemptuously, "Mu Yaja, you've raised a loyal and good dog." Minyu did not seem to take his blatant humiliation to heart. Instead, he said expressionlessly, "It doesn't matter if he's a good dog or not. Even a dog will recognize its master. Besides, a good dog will only recognize a good master." Without waiting for Minyu to finish, Mu Yanqing continued coldly, "What if I refuse to sign this report?" Minyu said unhurriedly, "Then, I'll unilaterally terminate my contract with your company." Mu Yanqing's eyes widened in surprise. With a look of disbelief, he laughed in anger. "What did you say? It doesn't matter if you sign this contract or not. If you don't sign it, you'll be dealt with according to your company's rules and regulations. Any employee of the Mu group who is absent from work for 5 days will be dealt with accordingly." After saying that, Minyu paused and nodded elegantly. With a smile, he said, "Young Master Yanqing, I'll take my leave now." With a faint smile, he turned around expressionlessly and walked toward the door without looking back. He did not seem to care about Mu Yanqing's ashen face as he turned to leave. Mu Yanqing's face instantly turned red. No matter how elegant he was, he could not maintain his composure at this moment. He growled, "Stop right there. Did I say you could leave?" Unexpectedly, Minyu didn't even turn his head. It was as if he didn't hear him at all. He opened the door and left. Bang! The door slammed shut with a loud bang. The muscles on Mu Yanqing's face twitched for a moment. His gaze was sinister and ferocious as he gritted his teeth and turned around. Glancing at the resignation letter on the table, he picked it up abruptly, tore it into shreds, crumpled it into a ball, and threw it into the trash can. Song Enya watched his every move and let out a long snort before saying, "Mu Yanqing, you haven't answered my question yet. What are you going to do with that Meng Qingxue?" At this moment, she was still angry because of what had happened to Meng Qingxue. She initially thought that she was just a woman who was clinging on to Mu Yanqing. She had experienced how flirtatious the man could be. She was also aware that this man had many women outside. Some were models, some were from the entertainment industry, and some were even students. However, this was not the most infuriating thing. What was more infuriating was that after Meng Qingxue left under her instigation, Mu Yanqing actually went to great lengths to find her. What did this mean? This meant that Mu Yanqing valued Meng Qingxue very much. Chapter 25-21. A man who had always been a womanizer was actually pursuing a woman who had disappeared without a trace. This was definitely not purely because that woman was pregnant with his child. She was also pregnant. She was also pregnant with his child, and she was certain that it was a boy. However, Mu Yanqing did not care about her at all from the start. He did not even care about her at all. What about Meng Qingxue, though? Mu Yanqing was secretly looking for that woman's whereabouts behind her back. She would never allow such a thing to happen. Mu Yanqing did not immediately respond to her doubts, but Song Enya did not have the patience to wait for his reply. Suddenly, she walked over expressionlessly and faced him. Mu Yanqing, let me tell you, I have my bottom line too. Don't think that the Song family can be bullied just because it's a little down now. Let me tell you, since I'm your fiancé and married to you, then Meng Qingxue is not allowed to exist. No matter where she goes, you're not allowed to look for her whereabouts. If you still care about my feelings, I'll have to trouble you to quietly kill the child in her womb. I, Song Enya, am not that easy to bully. Mu Yanqing suddenly laughed eerily and said coldly, Song Enya, you're really naive. Do you think that you have the right to control me just because you're my fiancé in name? Dream on. What? Song Enya looked sullen. Mu Yanqing, I control you. I'm controlling you. I'm just defending my rights as your future wife. I'm protecting my legal rights. Mu Yanqing immediately interrupted her impatiently. We haven't even collected our marriage certificate. So how can it be legal? You? Besides, what I hate the most is the way you talk about your selfishness, as if it's the most righteous thing you've ever done. Mu Yanqing paused for a moment before continuing. You can't tolerate Qingxue because you're worried that her existence will threaten your position as the Mu family's young madam. You don't have to worry about this at all. Here, I want to tell you that regardless of whether Meng Qingxue is here or not, whether you can find her or not, in my heart, you are not even worthy of carrying her shoes. In my heart, you're not even fit to carry her shoes. Upon hearing that, Song Enya felt as if her heart had received a heavy blow. It was as if a sharp needle had pierced her chest, causing her to feel excruciating pain. Her face turned as pale as white wax. Her lips trembled for a while, and she took a quick breath. She gritted her teeth and asked, Not even fit to carry his shoes? Mu Yanqing, do you really mean it? Mu Yanqing snorted disapprovingly as his lips curled into a mocking smile. Do you think I'm joking with you? Or do you think I'm as hypocritical as you? With that, he ignored her and instructed the new assistants. Clean this place up. I have something to do and need to go out. He had promoted 2 of his confidants to be his assistants the moment he took office. It had to be said that Mu Yaja was very arrogant and powerful. Mu Yaja only had Minyu by his side, but he felt that one was not enough. Since he was now the supreme leader of the Mu group, he needed at least 5 assistants by his side to reflect his aura. Chapter 25-22. Seeing that he was about to leave, Song Enya chased after him and tried to tug at his sleeve. Where are you going? Mu Yanqing did not even look at her as he flung her hand away. Song Enya was furious and shouted hysterically, Stop right there! Mu Yanqing turned around abruptly and glared at her fiercely. Song Enya, I'm warning you. We're in the company now. You must remember your place and don't act like a crazy woman. You'll embarrass the Mu and Song families. Song Enya was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down. Her eyes were red and swollen. Ever since she became pregnant, her emotions were easily out of control. She was no longer as calm and stable as before and often had hysterical outbursts. She forced herself to calm down and suddenly asked in a trembling voice, Mu Yanqing, do you treat me as your fiancé or not? Of course. Mu Yanqing's voice was cold. You're my fiancé. This is an undeniable fact. Since I've acknowledged you, I won't deny your value. Then, what right do you have to treat me like this? Song Enya widened her eyes as tears streamed down her cheeks. Why was it so difficult to find a man who would dote on her? First it was Mu Yaja. Now it was Mu Yanqing. None of them had ever cared about her. Only God knew how jealous she was of Yun Shirshir to be doted on like that. What about her? For a single favor, she felt like she was a beggar, pitifully begging for pity. But what she got in return was still disdain. Song Enya could not figure it out. She questioned him word by word. What right do you have? What right do you have to care so much about a lowly woman? Mu Yanqing was silent for a while. Suddenly, Meng Qingshua's voice and face appeared in his mind. He recalled the times when she lay aggrievedly on his chest and would occasionally throw a tantrum willfully. At that time, he felt that this woman was very much like a child, adorable and arrogant. He recalled that when he was unwell, she took care of him day and night, staying by his bedside and taking good care of him. At that time, he felt the radiance of motherhood and maturity from her. Mu Yanqing could not help curling his lips into a smile as he calmly said, "Based on the fact that she treats me wholeheartedly, she'll never scheme against me like you did." With that, he pushed the door open and left without another look at the Missy. Song Enya stood rooted to the ground in a daze, suddenly having an epiphany. It turned out that this man probably still hadn't gotten over the fact that she had schemed against him and used him. She fell to the ground in a daze as she stared blankly in the direction where Mu Yanqing had left. Tears fell silently from her eyes. With Mu Linfeng's support, Mu Yanqing's promotion was a matter of course. Mu Linfeng was extremely prestigious in the Mu family. After Mu Yaja left the Mu group, his words carried the most weight in the family. On the night before the announcement was made, Mu Yanqing tossed and turned restlessly in bed. His heart was heavy, and he was so agitated and uneasy that he could not fall asleep. Perhaps it was because he felt that the good thing he had been dreaming of all this time had come too suddenly that he could not help but doubt the authenticity of this matter. He even wondered if he was having a long and sweet dream. Once his sweet dream was shattered and he woke up from it, the Mu family would still be under Mu Yaja's control. Chapter 25-23. Perhaps this was not a dream, but in his imagination, the succession ceremony would probably not be carried out successfully. Someone would definitely make things difficult for him. However, on this day, the succession ceremony was held as scheduled. During the shareholders' meeting, he officially became the new president of the Mu Group under the witness of all the important members of the Mu family and the senior shareholders of the company. After the meeting, he walked into his office. The originally luxurious CEO's office had been cleaned up to look brand new, and the name tag on the table had been replaced with his name. It was only then that an indescribable heat surged from his chest like a dream. He had finally gotten what he wanted. He had become the real head of the Mu Group. He knew very well that, although he was the head of the company on the surface, the real power was still in the hands of Mu Linfeng. However, there was no hurry in this matter. Mu Linfeng's body was no longer as strong as it used to be. When he was no longer around, the real power would return to him, would it not? He was finally at ease. With this, he could finally satisfy the surging desire in his heart. He did not sit in the office for long. Instead, he left the office to patrol the employees' area. As he walked through the rows of employees' work areas, the gazes of the elites in suits and leather shoes that he met changed from the initial disdain and suspicion to the current reverence and subservience. He could feel the eagerness and flattery on the faces of the employees wherever he looked. This was probably the charm of power, right? Everyone would bow down to him and respect him. No one dared to disobey his will. Therefore, many people in the Mu family wanted to climb up the ladder by hook or by crook. They coveted this position for no other reason than to stand at the peak and be worshipped and looked up to by everyone. Standing at the peak, one would realize that when one looked down at them, everyone would be as insignificant as a speck of dust or an ant. He seemed to be able to flatten and flatten them at will. He had waited so long for this moment. Now, he finally got what he wanted. At the thought of this, Mu Yanqing wanted to laugh out loud without restraint, but his rationality restrained him from doing so. In the end, he managed to maintain his composure as he returned to the CEO's office. After the Mu Group's stock market plunged, although there were doubts about Mu Yanqing's succession, most of them regarded him as their savior. However, many senior and elite employees did not have much confidence in Mu Yanqing. If it was in the past, when Mu Yaja was in charge of the Mu Group, none of the financial groups in the world could compete with the Mu Group. However, things were different now. Mu Yaja left the Mu Group and took over the position of president of the Shengyu Financial Group with great fanfare. He made a beautiful comeback with great fanfare. Now he was ambitious and rapidly rising in power. He had become the leader of the Xinxiu Financial Group, This was simply a miracle. Apart from Mu Yaja, no one else would be able to create such a miracle. The Xingyu Financial Group, the existence that the Mu Group loved and hated, was now the biggest enemy of the Mu Group. Chapter 25-24. The reason why they said they loved and hated him was because the person in charge of Xingyu was the leader of the Mu Group whom they had always respected and looked up to. What they hated was that every time Xingyu made a move, it was undoubtedly to destroy the Mu Group's future. The ruthlessness of his moves was jaw-dropping. Mu Linfeng once thought pessimistically that the will of this chess piece had finally recovered. From now on, he was probably light years away from the end of his era. Perhaps there would never be an end to it. This was because he knew very well that his son, Yun Tianyu, was not a kind person and was not of his kind. At such a young age, he had already made a name for himself. His future was simply incredible. Checkmate. In the hotel suite, Yu placed his chess piece down with the conceit of a victor on his face. Mu Yaja furrowed his brows and looked at the proud little lad opposite him. He heard Yu say smugly and disdainfully, "Daddy, you've lost again. TSK, TSK. You have to admit that you're old." This lad was asking for a beating. How dare he tease his old man? Could he leave him some face? Yun Shishir was watching the game from the side with Xiao Yichen in her arms. When she saw the final result, she was not surprised and laughed out loud. "Hubby, you're no match for Yu at all." That's right. Daddy, you should give up struggling. Yu is the back wave and you're the front wave. He has already knocked you down to the beach. Mu Yaja glared at him, and the latter immediately shut up. He threw himself into Yun Shishir's arms aggrievedly and called out pitifully, "Mommy, Daddy is scolding me again." Yu said earnestly, "Daddy, don't be unwilling to admit defeat. Give up struggling. Your chess skills are not as good as mine." Mu Yaja said awkwardly, "I haven't played in a long time. I'm a little rusty." "Don't make excuses for your failure." Yu educated him seriously. "Even if you lose, you have to admit defeat gracefully. That's what a gentleman is." Mu Yaja gritted his teeth at her words. Oh my God, he really wanted to beat this kid up. Asking for a beating. All right. It's getting late. Yun Shishir looked at the sky outside the window. It was 10 p.m. in Prague. It was time to rest early. We still have to fly to Italy tomorrow. Yu immediately hugged Yun Shishir and said coquettishly, "I want to sleep with Mommy." Xiao Yichen immediately hugged Yun Shishir, unwilling to let go. "I want to sleep with Mommy too." Mu Yaja walked over, pinched each of them by their ears, and pulled them away. "Sleep on your own. Don't hoard my woman." This domineering declaration was very much his style. Yun Shishir's lips twitched. Every night, the father-son trio would fight over her as scheduled. Yu and Xiao Yichen would fight to sleep with her. But in the end, Mu Yaja would kick them away in disdain. Yu and Xiao Yichen covered their ears and complained bitterly, "Daddy is bullying us. Pinching ears is domestic violence. We want to protest. When I was your age, I was already independent. Why are you so clingy?" Humph. The two little kids snorted in unison and looked at him with disdain. Yu suddenly said, "Forget it, Mu Yichen, we won't stoop to his level." With that, he held Mu Yichen's hand and strode out of the room. He did not even look back. He was very suave. Chapter 25-25. You're spoiling them too much. Mu Yaja was still in a bad mood. After all, he had lost 3 rounds to his son in less than 10 minutes. Naturally, he would not be in a good mood. "They're a little clingy," Mu Yaja said. "Quickly get them to find a wife. That way they won't have to stick to my wife." Yun Shishir's eyes twitched. "Are you serious? Why, they're only 7 years old. Was he looking for a child bride?" Yun Shishir suddenly walked over to the sofa, sat down beside him and hugged his shoulders. "Today, the director called to ask when I'll be returning to the set. It seems that the wedding photo shoot has delayed some time. I only applied for 5 days off, but I didn't expect the schedule to be so tight." 5 days isn't enough. Mu Yaja gently stroked her hair and said unhurriedly, There's no need to rush back to the set since the filming is going on. After all, the wedding photo shoot is more important than filming. Then, is your schedule tight? Yoon Shirshir asked worriedly. Your schedule should be even tighter than mine. Shangyu is still waiting for you to rush back to take charge, right? I've made arrangements in advance. If there's anything, Jinyu will take care of it. Oh. Yoon Shirshir pondered for a moment before suddenly saying, I saw the news today. Mu Yenqing has officially taken over the position of Dishing Financial Group's CEO. Do you know about this? Mu Yaja appeared indifferent. It's not something to be concerned about. I'm worried that the Mu Group will make a bold move against Shengyu Financial Group and launch a series of counterattacks. The business world is filled with gunpowder all the time. There's no difference whether there's one more enemy or one less. Besides, Mu Linfeng is now in charge of the Mu family. They're already at their wits' end. You, on the other hand, don't have to worry so much. Mu Yaja lowered his head and could not help but give her a light peck on the lips. Then, he smiled and said, You're here for the wedding photo shoot. Why are you worrying about this and that? I'm worried for you. I know what I'm doing. If I'm not confident, I won't act. Since I've left Mu Group, I'm confident that I can trample Mu Group under my feet. After he finished speaking, he looked at her face and his gaze became gentler. Under the light, her beautiful face was bright and beautiful. His heart was moved by her moving eyes and he couldn't help but move closer to her. His thin lips covered her delicate lips and kissed her charmingly. But there was a hidden ambition. Under the gentleness, it was as if he wanted to swallow her into his stomach like a tiger eyeing its prey. Yoon Shirshir followed her instincts and responded to his kiss. He suddenly picked her up and walked towards the bed. The next day, there was a 9 a.m. flight to Italy. This was the last part of the wedding photo shoot schedule. It was also Yoon Shirshir's most anticipated destination, Italy. As she waited to board the plane, she was filled with anticipation. They arrived at the airport as scheduled. After arriving in Italy, they got into the car specially sent by the hotel to pick them up. However, halfway through the journey, the road was suddenly congested. For some reason, the traffic in Italy was convenient and there were rarely traffic jams, but now it was so congested that it was difficult to move half a meter. Mu Yaja glanced at his watch, looking extremely displeased. He then asked in fluent Italian, Why is there a traffic jam? Chapter 25-26. The driver was surprised because Mu Yaja's Italian was too fluent. If it wasn't for his handsome face, he would have thought that he was a native of Italy. Honorable sir, I'm not sure either. We've been stuck in traffic for 5 minutes. What's going on in front? Mu Yaja suddenly said to the hotel manager in the front passenger seat. Go down and see what's going on. Yes, sir. The blonde hotel manager immediately got out of the car and walked forward to investigate the situation. Yoon Shirshir sat in the back seat. After waiting for a long time in the traffic jam, she couldn't help but feel a little sleepy and yawned a few times. Mu Yaja glanced at her and asked, Sleepy? Yeah, a little. Yoon Shirshir couldn't help but blush. She complained, Didn't you not rest well last night? This energetic man had tormented her until midnight before he finally stopped. She didn't know where he got his strong physical strength from. He slept later than her, but he was still full of energy and didn't look tired at all. Or was it because her stamina was too weak? Her physical fitness wasn't bad, but compared to this inhuman, it wasn't worth mentioning. Mu Yaja couldn't help but smirk. He asked, Are you blaming me? Yoon Shirshir's face turned even redder. She said angrily, Who else can I blame if not you? It's all your fault. You were very passionate last night. You wanted it so much. I was just trying to satisfy you. Mu Yaja said righteously. Yoon Shirshir's face was so red that it was about to bleed. She couldn't help but say angrily, What do you mean? What do you mean I was passionate too? It was clearly you. Mu Yaja saw that she was hesitating to speak. Her expression was incomparably bashful, as if she was too embarrassed to say anything. He could not help but want to hear it. He inched closer to her and pressed on. It's clearly me. What about me? I'm not talking about it. Why aren't you talking about it? Wuxia teased her on purpose. It's clearly me. What's wrong with that? Yun Shishir glared at him coquettishly. What do you mean what happened? How could such a man force her? He was clearly trying to tease her and embarrass her. Last night, it was clear that he wanted more and more, as if it wasn't enough. There were several times when she begged for mercy, wanted to stop, protested repeatedly, and expressed that she was tired. However, he didn't know fatigue and worked hard on her body, tormenting her until she felt like her entire body was about to fall apart. In the end, she collapsed on the bed in exhaustion. Her entire body went limp, and in the end, she could not move at all. Wasn't it all because of him? How was she supposed to say these words? Yun Shishir glared at him again and again, her heart full of resentment. Wuxia silently cursed in his heart. If he didn't work harder to sow the seeds, where would the daughter he longed for come from? He wholeheartedly hoped that her belly would be able to work harder and give birth to a little princess for him. Only then did he put this matter into practice. This man was the most black-bellied. He knew that this woman would take certain contraceptive measures and would take pills before doing it. Hence, he tampered with her long-acting contraceptive pills and replaced the pills in the box with folic acid. Chapter 25-27. This stupid girl was still kept in the dark until now. Wuxia couldn't help but want to laugh when he imagined the day when she realized that she was pregnant and holding the diagnosis report in her hand. However, he held it in. Besides, he had some selfish motives. If she was pregnant, she would have no reason to continue working in the entertainment industry. When the time came, he would set up an entertainment company for her to manage. When she was in a good mood, she would take on a few good scripts. It would be very relaxing. Although his methods were a little despicable, this woman didn't cooperate. The hotel manager returned quickly and got into the car. He said to Wuxia, "Sir, I went to check on the situation. There was an accident and 2 cars collided." Car accident? Yes, it was a collision. The police are on their way. The road will be clear soon. Wuxia nodded and gently pulled Yun Shishir into his arms. He asked gently, "Are you tired?" "Yes, a little. I'm just afraid that the 2 little guys are tired from the flight." The hotel sent 2 cars to pick them up. Yu and Wuxian sat in the car behind. At this moment, they were most likely dozing off. The road was clear again. The car moved slowly. When they passed by the scene, they saw a Bentley and a Maserati colliding. Yun Shishir couldn't help but take another look. By the side of the road, a woman with brown hair and black eyes was standing face to face with a uniformed police officer. They seemed to be cooperating with the investigation. The woman had an Eastern face. She was exquisite and beautiful, especially her eyes. They were as delicate as a painting. Her willow leaf-like eyebrows were gentle and reserved. Nowadays, very few people drew such eyebrows. Most of the people had a Korean-style unibrow, but few people were interested in willow eyebrows. However, this woman was very suitable for willow eyebrows. It made her almond-shaped eyes charming. She had a high nose bridge and pink cherry lips. Her facial features might not be shockingly exquisite if they were separated separately, but when put together, they were extremely harmonious and beautiful. Moreover, they were extremely recognizable and unforgettable. Perhaps it was because she was particularly interested in beautiful things. For some reason, Yun Shishir paid special attention to her and couldn't help but glance at her. The woman seemed a little annoyed and frustrated. She raised her hand to look at her watch and subconsciously glanced up. The car sent by the hotel to pick her up brushed past her. For some reason, she couldn't help but glance at the car window. The car window was rolled down. Therefore, he could see the person sitting in the back seat at a glance. The woman's face suddenly stiffened and her gaze paused for a moment. Immediately after, an extremely surprised and suspicious expression surfaced on her face. She couldn't help but chase after the car for a few steps. When she clearly saw the man sitting in the back seat of the car, she was shocked and couldn't help but take a step forward. She was wearing high heels, but she didn't seem to care at all as she chased after the car. Yun Shishir had already retracted her gaze, but when she looked up, she saw in the rearview mirror that the exquisite-looking woman was chasing after the car. She was waving her hands, and her hair was messed up by the wind. Her red lips were slightly open as if she was shouting something. However, sitting in the car, she couldn't hear anything at all. Yoon Shirshir muttered in puzzlement. That's weird. Why is this woman chasing after the car? Chapter 25-28. Muyaja raised his eyebrows and did not catch her muttering. What? There's a woman chasing after our car. Yoon Shirshir then added. It's really strange. I don't know if she's mistaken me for someone else. Hearing this, Muyaja looked in the rearview mirror too. The woman was nowhere to be seen. There's no one. It can't be? I saw her chasing after us just now. Yoon Shirshir looked at the rearview mirror curiously, but the woman was nowhere to be seen. Maybe she's not chasing after us. As she spoke, she gently rested her head on his shoulder. The car sped away at lightning speed. Miss, are you okay? On the road, the brown-haired woman lay on the ground and looked at the back view of the car. She bit her lip and hit the ground hard. She was a little angry. Coincidentally, she was wearing high heels today. Running all the way here, she sprained her ankle in a panic. She fell heavily on the ground. She panicked and wanted to chase after the car, but it was already far away. She only remembered the car plate number. She propped herself up slowly and stood up slightly. There was a graze on her knee and a layer of skin on her heel had been scraped off by the edge of her high heels. The police officer ran up and helped her up. Are you okay? I'm fine. It's just a graze. As the woman spoke, she raised her head and smiled at him. Officer, can I trouble you to check a license plate number for me? This? The police officer looked hesitant. If it was an ordinary person who made such a request, he would definitely reject it firmly. However, the woman in front of him was the ambassador of country Z's embassy in Italy. Her father was a well-known Chinese entrepreneur in Italy and her mother was the chief diplomat of the embassy. She had a prominent background. It was not easy to reject her request. The woman smiled at him and said politely, "Thank you, officer." When the car arrived at the hotel, the bellman carried the luggage into the room. Muyaja and Yoon Shirshir carried Muichen and Yu into the luxurious suite. The two little fellows did not wake up even when they were held in the arms of the two people. After such a long journey, they were already exhausted. Lying on the two people's shoulders, they closed their eyes and fell asleep. Muyaja deliberately did not wake them up. They had flown all the way from Prague to Italy. Besides the time difference, they were exhausted. Anyway, they did not have any plans for the night. Muyaja planned to settle the two little guys down before going to the opera with Yoon Shirshir. Italian opera was world famous. Yoon Shirshir had been thinking about it for a long time. As a husband, how could he not fulfill his wife's small wish? After entering the hotel, Muyaja carried the two little guys to the bed. During this time, Yu woke up once and struggled to get up. However, Muyaja saw that he was very sleepy and coaxed him back to sleep. Taking advantage of the time when the two little guys finally stopped sleeping, he made love with her again. After the romantic moment, he carried her to the shower room and served her a warm and hot bath. After she was done, Yoon Shirshir took the hairdryer to him and said coquettishly, "Help me dry my hair." Okay. He would not reject any request that could be fulfilled. Chapter 25-29. He took the hairdryer and had just turned it on when he heard the doorbell ringing. Ding dong. Ding dong. Yoon Shirshir looked out the door in surprise and asked with a strange expression, "Who is it?" "It's probably room service." "Yeah." Muyaja winked at her mysteriously. "I've prepared a candlelight dinner just for you." Yoon Shirshir was stunned for a while and said shyly, "It's so romantic. I'll go get the door. Wait for me here." Muyaja hugged her and kissed her cheek before turning to leave the shower room. Yoon Shirshir picked up the hairdryer and blew herself dry. Her heart was as sweet as honey. This man really knew how to be romantic sometimes. Time and time again he surprised her. From the proposal to the engagement, and now to the wedding photo shoot, this originally rigid and dull man seemed to have been enlightened overnight. The romantic cells in his body seemed to have been revived, and he knew how to flirt with her occasionally. This was a huge improvement. Just as she was immersed in the romantic fantasy of a candlelight dinner, she suddenly realized that he had taken too long to open the door. Curious about the candlelight dinner, she put down the hairdryer and tiptoed out of the shower room. However, just as she walked to the entrance, she saw a scene that made her freeze. Wuxia, dressed in a black bathrobe, stood at the door with his back facing her. In front of him was a brown-haired woman who had thrown herself into his embrace. Her arms were tightly wrapped around his waist. Her fingers were long and slender, but due to the tight embrace, her knuckles had turned white. Wuxia finally came to his senses after being in a daze for a long time. He frowned and took a while to realize who the woman in his arms was. They had not seen each other for a long time, and he couldn't even call out her full name. In his hazy memory, the girl's warm and clear face floated to his mind. He couldn't help but follow his memory and silently said a name, Xian, Brother Zhe. The woman buried her face in his chest, and a warm current flowed down along the lines of his muscles. I miss you so much, the woman cried emotionally. I thought that I would never be able to see you again in this life. Hearing this, Wuxia's expression changed. Suddenly, the corners of his lips curled up, and he couldn't help but sigh dotingly. Silly, haven't we met? Yun Shirshi's face stiffened. She didn't know how to deal with such a situation. Who was this woman? He heard her call him Brother Zhe, and he called her Xian. Could it be that they already knew each other? However, why did she feel that this woman's attitude towards him was somewhat unusual? Yun Shirshir looked at her hands that were tightly wrapped around his waist. Only when the woman raised her head and saw her familiar face did Yun Shirshir realize who this woman was. Isn't that the brown-haired woman from this afternoon? Because her facial features were very unique and beautiful. It was unforgettable. She had a head of brown hair that made her look pure and sweet. Her palm-sized oval face was fair, and she had on light and elegant makeup. It wasn't too bright, but it was fresh and refined. It was just right. How could she forget that this was the woman who had chased after their car? Chapter 25:30. Could it be that he saw an old friend in the car at first glance? A dinner car was parked beside the woman, and the candlelight on it was constantly swaying. It was romantic and charming. Contrasting with their backs, she felt an inexplicable discomfort in her heart. Yun Shirshir suddenly felt a little embarrassed. She called out softly, "Honey." Wuxia's back stiffened. He suddenly came back to his senses and gently pushed the woman away. Yun Shirshir noticed that his movements were gentle and soft, as if he was afraid that it would be too abrupt. It could be seen that although he was unprepared for the woman's sudden hug, he did not reject it. Her heart suddenly fell to the bottom of the valley. The doubts in her heart were infinitely magnified. He turned around and saw her. He immediately walked up to her and said in a deep voice, "Why are you out in a bathrobe? Aren't you cold? I saw you open the door for so long and didn't come in, so I was a little worried. Go in first and come out after you change." Yun Shirshir did not respond to him immediately. Instead, she looked at the woman at the door in confusion. "This is..." Wuxia turned around and glanced at the woman standing at the door, who looked a little uneasy. Under the woman's smiling gaze, he said softly, "An old friend." "An old friend?" "Yes, Rongxian. She immigrated to Italy when she was 12. Wuxia paused, hugged Yun Shirshir, and introduced her to the woman. "Xian. Let me introduce you. This is my wife, Yun Shirshir." "This is my wife, Yun Shirshir." She noticed that his tone and adjectives were intimate, gentle, and affectionate. In a way that made her jealous and envious, he introduced the unidentified woman beside him to her. "Wife? Is he married? Wife?" She had thought that at his age he would not be married. When Rongxian heard this unfamiliar word, she staggered slightly and almost lost the smile on her face. Her eyes, which had been full of anticipation, were now full of disappointment. She had thought that this woman was his woman. Women are different from wives. There were countless possibilities for women. They were born out of love, but they had nothing to do with love. However, the identity of his wife was different. Based on her understanding of this man, his wife represented the woman he had chosen in his long life. When she first saw the man sitting in the back seat in the afternoon, her mind went blank for a second. Before her brain could react, her body had already made a conditioned reflex action. She couldn't help but start walking and chase after the car. Wuxia. Originally, she thought that this name would fade away from her life. However, in this unexpected encounter, she inadvertently saw that mature and shockingly handsome face. No matter how many years passed, it still could not wash away that handsome face that was deeply engraved in her memory. The adoration that was hidden in his heart was something that he had purposely tried not to think about and tried to forget. However, as they met again, countless burning emotions suddenly surged in his chest. That adoration was revived once again. Madness. Wuxia. This name was the most unforgettable memory of her childhood. Chapter 25:31. Using the car plate number that she had memorized, she quickly found out his whereabouts and chased him all the way to the hotel. However, she bumped into the candlelight banquet that was being delivered. The moment the waiter knocked on the door, she stood at the door. The long wait and nervousness made her feel a little helpless. She had originally thought that she would probably never see him again in this lifetime. However, this unexpected encounter made her believe that it was a fated meeting and fate. Therefore, she chased after him regardless of the consequences. With a burning passion, the moment the door opened, she pounced on him and tightly hugged his lean body that she hadn't seen in a long time, refusing to let go. Brotherhood. The memory of his youth, she called softly, trying to rouse his distant memory. The hand that was about to push her away suddenly froze. She knew that this man had recognized her. Oh my God, he still hadn't forgotten her. This realization made her jump with joy. However, just as happiness surged in her heart, the next second, it was completely shattered by this introduction. This is my wife. What a formal introduction. The dream that had been surging in her heart was completely shattered because of this introduction. However, such a line was extremely in line with this man's style of doing things. He was swift and decisive, never dragging his feet. Once he had set his mind on something, he would be stubborn to the end. This man was very smart, so smart that it was unsettling. From just now, she had felt the change in this man's expression. From the initial confusion to the gradual realization, and then to the final smile and acceptance. However, vaguely, he still maintained a distance from her. This estrangement was due to his deep understanding of his current identity. He was a man with a family, a wife and children whom he loved dearly, and a blissful life. Therefore, no matter from which angle, he would always maintain a gentlemanly distance from women. At the same time, he seemed to be eager to announce Yoon Shershir's identity in order to cut off the feelings that she shouldn't have for him. She sighed again. This man was too smart, too sharp. He seemed to have sensed her feelings that she couldn't let go of. Therefore, when she was full of joy, he smiled and introduced his wife in a gentlemanly manner, as if to draw a line between them. Xian, when you grow up, I'll marry you. Okay? Xian, I like you. Let's be together forever. The promise of childhood sweethearts still echoed in her ears. The young man's solemn vow seemed to still ring in her ears. However, more than 10 years had passed and things had changed. At this moment, there was another unfamiliar woman standing beside him, and it was obvious that he loved her very much. Did he tell this woman about the vow that he had once made to her? Thinking of this, Rongxian couldn't help but bite her lips hard. Those speculations were like needles piercing into her heart, corroding it to the point where it was almost unbearable. She had chased after him without a second thought. He already had his own happiness. She couldn't help but hate herself. Why didn't she look for him back then? But at the same time, she was annoyed with him. Why hadn't he come looking for her after so long? If she missed him, would be a lifetime. He couldn't accept it. She suddenly felt very unwilling, but she had no reason to convince herself not to let go. Chapter 25:32. She was not a clingy woman, but when she saw him hugging the woman intimately, she felt as if her heart had been pierced by a knife. In the hotel, the dawn dinner that originally belonged to 2 people was now occupied by 3 people sitting at the table, but each of them had their own thoughts. Wuxia was a little nervous. He glanced at the woman sitting next to him from time to time. He didn't know if she had seen the scene just now. He deliberately introduced her to Rongxian formally in order to prevent the 2 women from thinking too much. He was also surprised to meet Rongxian in Italy. He even forgot that there was a girl in the distant country of Italy whom he had loved when he was young. In his innocent youth, he also had a girl who he loved. At that time, his feelings for her were very simple. He liked her and wanted to marry her when he grew up and live happily with her for the rest of his life. It was a beautiful imagination, like a fairy tale. However, this love gradually faded as the memory faded. Compared with the unforgettable memory of him in Rongxian's mind, his memory of her disappeared with the flight to Italy. Rongxian sat at the table and cut the steak absent-mindedly. As if to ease the tension, she deliberately put all her attention on the steak. She carefully cut it into neat cubes and finally stuffed it into her mouth silently. At this moment, no matter how delicious the steak was, it was like chewing wax in her mouth. Yun Shirshir glanced at her and then at the man next to her. She didn't say anything, but silently cut the steak and tasted it casually. In the long and tense atmosphere, Yun Shirshir was the first to break the silence. "Honey, aren't you going to introduce her?" Hearing her words, Wuxia finally came to his senses and looked up. "Rongxian, have you forgotten? You have just introduced her name." Yun Shirshir said again. "Is there nothing else worth introducing except her name?" This sentence was slightly unfriendly. It could be heard that she was very repulsed by this woman named Rongxian. It was said that women were extremely sensitive. Yun Shirshir was a meticulous person. Even a fool could tell that this woman named Rongxian was looking at her man in a different way. She clearly had feelings for him, but this kind of adoration was not something she was happy to see. Which woman could tolerate a woman who had feelings for her man sitting at the same table as her? Not even for a moment. Therefore, the moment she opened her mouth, the smell of gunpowder filled the air. Wuxia could also tell that Rongxian's tone was unkind. Just as he was about to speak, Rongxian smiled and said, "I'm sorry. My behavior today was indeed a bit abrupt. However, Zhe and I haven't seen each other for more than 10 years. Now that we've met again, it's hard to suppress the joy in my heart. Please forgive me for offending you." Pausing for a moment, she looked at Wuxia and said shyly, "I didn't expect to meet my childhood sweetheart. I feel very fortunate and happy." Childhood sweethearts. She didn't like this word at all. Her heart skipped a beat. She was his childhood sweetheart? Chapter 25:33. The woman did not seem to notice the uncomfortable expression on Yun Shirshir's face. She smiled faintly and said in a low voice, "I'm also a little surprised. I haven't seen you for so many years, and I didn't expect Zhe to be married. Oh, by the way, I still don't know your name." Rongxian noticed Yun Shirshir's unintentional protest. However, this woman had immigrated to Italy at the age of 10 and had grown up in Italy. Therefore, she had adopted the typical straightforwardness of Europeans and did not hide her hostility towards this woman. She asked for her name, but her tone was not polite either. "My name is Yun Shirshir." "Yun Shirshir. Does that mean Yun Shan Shirshir?" "Yes. Yun means Yun, and Shir means poetic." "Oh, you guessed right." Wuxia was a little surprised by her Chinese. She had immigrated to Italy at the age of 10, but she could still speak Chinese fluently and clearly. It was indeed amazing. Rongxian seemed to understand the doubt in Wuxia's eyes and said lightly, "Zhe, did you know? I'm working in the embassy now." "Is your mother still a diplomat working in the embassy?" "Yes." She was calm, generous, and elegant. Her speech and manner of conversation were extremely noble, and she had an indescribable temperament. If one had to describe her, one could only say that from her speech and behavior, this woman was obviously from the upper class. Her natural and unrestrained manner made her image seem a little harsh. After all, she was Wuxia's wife, and this woman was just her husband's childhood sweetheart. After so many years, it was not inappropriate for them to sit down and have a meal together, reminisce about the past, and tease each other. However, Rong Xian's lack of honesty and unkind words made her seem a little petty. Childhood sweetheart? Yun Shirshir suddenly laughed and looked at him. I didn't expect you to have your first awakening of love when you were young. I thought you were like this when you were young, rigid and dull, like a little old man. Ha ha! Really? Rong Xian was a little surprised. When Zhe was young, he was not as mature and steady as he is now. Although sometimes he was a little dull and gloomy, most of the time, well, at least when he was with me, he still loved to laugh. When he was young, his eyes were very beautiful, as if there were countless little stars hidden in them, and they were very charming. It was because of his eyes that I fell in love with him. Her straightforwardness and openness made Yun Shirshir a little uncomfortable. One Yun Shirshir, and Rong Xian's words. Rong Xian's Rong Xian's Yun's twos to her. She's S's, SSSSSSS. However, because the narration came from the mouth of a woman, Yun Shirshir couldn't help but resist and reject it. While Yun Shirshir was silent, she saw Rong Xian looking at Muyaja with a smile. At the same time, she seemed to recall the carefree days of her youth through his face. Chapter 25-34. Very big. Muyaja put down his knife and fork, took a napkin, and elegantly wiped the traces of tears from the corners of his mouth. He smiled slightly and said, I still remember how you looked like when you were a child. Your eyes were big and watery, and you were always crying. Whenever you cried, the sky would darken, the earth would change color, your nose would turn red, and your tears wouldn't stop. No matter how I coaxed you, it was useless. After that, he didn't continue. Rong Xian couldn't help but laugh. Who said that coaxing didn't work? At that time, when you saw me crying, you would try to make me happy. However, you didn't know how to coax girls, and you didn't know how to be opportunistic. When you were at your wit's end, you could only hold me in your arms and coax me gently. I asked you to sing, and you sang obediently. Just like that, I listened and stopped crying. Do you still remember? When you were a child, you didn't sing well. You couldn't even sing properly. You just sang all over the place. I was crying and crying, but I was so amused by you that I forgot to cry. As Rong Xian spoke, a faint glow appeared on her face, and she looked extremely gentle. She was immersed in nostalgia, but the more she thought about it, the more melancholy she felt. Thinking about how the man she used to love was now married, her heart ached again. With such a bad mood, she deliberately wanted to give Yun Shirshir a taste of her own medicine. She deliberately led the conversation to the memories of their youth, as if she was deliberately trying to upset her. It was just as she wished. Yun Shirshir's appetite was turned upside down by her. She suddenly put aside her knife and fork, lowered her head, and took a napkin to wipe the corners of her mouth silently. Rong Xian's understatement was infinitely magnified. She could tell that Rong Xian was deliberately trying to disgust her. Why was she talking about the past at this time? Could it be that she was deliberately trying to anger her? She had never participated in or known about the youth of the man she loved. In those beautiful memories, there was no her name, only Rong Xian's. So, was she flaunting her prowess to her? Was Rong Xian deliberately making fun of her? Thinking of this, Yun Shirshir gently took a sip of the dry red wine. Then, she elegantly curved the corners of her lips and smiled. That's great. From what you said, I found out that a certain man has such a cute side. Sometimes, when he thought about it, he felt regretful. I did not participate in the memories of his youth, but fortunately, my name will be in his future, and only my name will be in it. Thinking of this, I feel very satisfied. The look on Rong Xian's face suddenly froze for a few seconds. She looked at him deeply and said with a faint smile, Shirshir, do you know? I really envy you. I can see that Brother Zhe is deeply in love with you, but there are some things that can't be envied. However, I feel that the more blissful it is, the shorter it is. Therefore, the more blissful it is, the more we have to seize every moment. If you are not careful, happiness will fly away from your hands as if it has grown wings. Therefore, the more blissful you are, the more you must know how to grasp it. Of course I understand that. Yun Shishir smiled faintly. Rong Xian then sighed. Things have changed with the passage of time. As soon as she finished speaking, a weak voice suddenly sounded. Chapter 25:35. Daddy, I'm hungry. Rong Xian froze for a moment and looked in the direction of the voice. She saw a little boy in a shirt open the door and walk out of the room, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Yu was awakened by hunger. When he opened his eyes, he saw Xiao Yichen sleeping soundly with his limbs spread out. He rubbed his small belly and decided to leave Xiao Yichen alone and get up to look for food. As soon as he put on his clothes, Yu vaguely heard someone talking outside the door. When he heard Yun Shishir's voice, he immediately opened the door and went out. However, as soon as he walked into the dining room, he saw 3 people sitting at the table. One of them was a brown-haired woman, who was beautiful but unfamiliar. Yu couldn't help but be stunned. She was probably a friend of his parents. He thought to himself, then ignored her and ran over to Yun Shishir to ask for a hug. Yun Shishir sat him on her lap and asked curiously, "Mommy, what time is it now?" "It's past 7 o'clock in the evening." Did I sleep for so long? I guess I won't be able to sleep again tonight." Oh. Yun Shishir's gloomy mood was instantly dispelled. She couldn't help but gently pinch his little face and say unhappily, "I should have woken you up earlier. I shouldn't have let you sleep for so long. Otherwise, you'll be full of energy and won't be able to sleep at night." Rong Xian's eyes were wide open from the beginning to the end. For a moment, she couldn't digest the child's identity well. Just now, when she saw the child running out of the room, that extremely handsome little face fell into her eyes, and she was a little surprised at once. She saw the little boy's small pink face, a pair of big black and bright eyes, a small nose, a pink mouth, and snow-white teeth. When he smiled, small dimples appeared on his cheeks. He was unbelievably cute. His delicate little face was unbelievably fair, as if it was carved out of jade. It made people want to reach out and touch it personally to be sure that the child was alive and not a work of art. The expression on the little boy's white and lovely face was lovely and charming. He was like a polite little gentleman, and when he smiled, it was as if his heart was about to melt. What surprised her even more was that almost at the first sight of the child, Rong Xian immediately realized that the child must be Mu Yaja's child. If he kept a straight face, he would look exactly like Mu Yaja in his younger days. She could only imagine how handsome and cool he would be when he grew up. His looks would be earth-shattering. But this cute side of the child's face. And when he glanced, he gave out a cold zzz's eyes. However, when he turned his head to look at Yun Shishir, his expression instantly changed. An obedient and adorable smile appeared on his face again. His lips curled up to reveal his pearly white teeth as he called out to her in a childish voice. It was simply enough to make one's heart melt a little. She was so envious. If she could have such a cute child, she would be willing to exchange her precious youth for it. Was this his child with her? He was already so big, but, if she remembered correctly, he was only 29 years old, and this child looked about 6 or 7 years old. Could it be that he got married at the age of 12? Chapter 25:36. So early. He was a proud man who had always been free and did not like to be bound by any restrictions. For him, marriage was just a formality. How could he get married so early? Rong Xian's heart suddenly turned cold. The unwillingness in her heart instantly turned into a powerless loss and empty loneliness. Over the years, it wasn't like she had never had a man before. Some of them didn't last long, while others lasted for 2 to 3 years. However, all kinds of men passed through her world, but she could never find the naivety of her first love when she was young. First love? To her, he could be considered an obscure first love, right? Or was it just her wishful thinking? Rong Xian suddenly realized that the expression on her usually elegant and calm face was a little stiff. She tried to adjust the muscles on her face and raised the corners of her lips with difficulty, although it looked a little forced. "Brother Zhe, is this your son?" When Mu Yaja heard this, he raised his head and nodded. Then, a trace of affection and even pride appeared on his originally cold face. He was very proud of his two sons, Yu Yu and Xiao Chen. Yu Yu, this is Aunt Xian Xian. Yu Yu's gaze finally landed on the woman. He gave her a more formal look before his lips curled into a gentlemanly smile. Auntie Xian Xian. Even though the smile on her face was cute, her voice sounded unwilling and cold. It was not very affectionate. Perhaps the child was intelligent enough to sense that his mommy wasn't friendly to this woman. No matter what the reason was, the little guy was naturally on the same side as his mommy. Therefore, even though he called her auntie, his tone was incomparably cold. The smile on Rong Xian's face faded a little because of embarrassment. When Yun Shirshir heard this, she was inexplicably angry. He was indeed her son, who was in the same trench as her. Yun Shirshir saw Yu Yu's coldness towards her and felt warm in her heart. Perhaps the little guy also realized that she did not like Rong Xian, so his attitude towards her was particularly cold. Rong Xian did not seem to be discouraged. In front of Muyaja, she naturally tried to build a good relationship with him. She said affectionately, "Your nickname is Yu Yu, right?" "Yes." Yu Yu only gave a brief yes, and then pestered Yun Shirshir to cut the steak for him. Good, good. You've just woken up and you have such an appetite." She mumbled to herself in love and annoyance before feeding him the steak she had just cut. Yu Yu opened his mouth wide and took a big bite. His mouth was stuffed with food as he mumbled, "While little Yi-Chen is still asleep, I secretly got up to look for food. Is Xiao Yi-Chen still asleep?" "Yes," Muyaja suddenly said. "Go and wake Mu-Yi-Chen up. Otherwise, he'll complain that he's hungry at night." Yu Yu pouted and did not say anything. He jumped down from Yun Shirshir and went to the room to wake Xiao Yi-Chen up. Everything seemed so harmonious. Rong Xian looked at this harmonious scene and felt that her presence was unnecessary. Chapter 25:37. He's so cute. Everyone says that sons look like their mommies, but I didn't expect you to look exactly like you when you were young. She was deliberately bringing the topic back to when they were young. This woman was really up to no good. Was it because she couldn't get a word in when they were talking about their childhood? This woman's every word and action was trying to exclude her. Muyaja asked, "Is that so?" "Yes. He really does look like you when you were young." "He's my son, so of course he looks like me." After a pause, Muyaja continued, "However, he doesn't look exactly like me. His eyes look more like Shirshir's." Shirshir. What an affectionate way of addressing her, just like how he used to call her Xian Xian. It was extremely intimate. Rong Xian bit her lip silently. Her eyes were slightly red because of envy and jealousy. "That's great. You have a son. I'm so envious. It's a pity that I'm still single now. Maybe it's fate, but I haven't found the person I like yet. My parents keep urging me, but I still feel that it's better to be single. After all, there are some things in my heart that I can't let go of. I don't want to force myself to let go." As Rong Xian spoke, she looked a little sad. Yun Shirshir felt even more nauseous all of a sudden. She did not know what kind of meaning was hidden in the woman's words. In the room, Yu climbed onto the bed and quickly removed the blanket from Xiao Yi-Chen's body. Then, she grabbed his collar and shook him awake. Xiao Yi-Chen opened his eyes groggily and saw Yu Yu's enlarged face right in front of him. Her pink lips opened and closed as she said, "Mu-Yi-Chen, Mommy was bullied by a bad woman." "What?" Xiao Yi-Chen's sleepiness instantly disappeared. He opened his eyes and asked fiercely, "Where did this bad woman come from? How dare she bully my mommy?" "Humph, I don't know where she came from," Yu Yu said angrily. "When I arrived, I noticed that the atmosphere was a little strange. I was still thinking, could it be another old lover of Daddy's that popped out of nowhere?" Xiao Yi-Chen sat up as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He raised his hand and swore, "That's impossible. I swear, at least as long as I've grown up, Daddy has never had an unknown woman by his side. You can't read his mind, so how would you know?" "Forget it. I don't care. Get up and chase that bad woman away." Mu-Yi-Chen nodded, and immediately, inside the dining room, Yun Shirshir was completely unaware of the grand scheme. The two lads were plotting in secret. She lowered her head and listened to the two men's conversation. So, did you come to Italy to take wedding photos? Yes. Mui Chen looked at Yun Shishir affectionately and smiled. We can't be careless about our marriage. We've delayed it for so long, so we should give her a satisfactory explanation. Of course, we can't be careless about our marriage. Even if it's just a wedding photo shoot, we have to put in a lot of effort. Hearing this, Rong Xian's smile became weaker. She felt that she was purely looking for trouble this time. Chapter 25:38. Do you have any recommendations about the best locations for the wedding photo shoot? There are a few good locations in Italy, but they are usually not open to the public. For example, the Caserta Palace and the Savoy Palace. However, if it's me, I can pull some strings. If the wedding photo shoot is done in the palace, the result will definitely be very luxurious. Mu Yaja's eyes twinkled. He did not have many connections in Italy. Italy was not a market that he could dabble in, so resources were scarce there. However, Rong Xian was different. She was Z country's ambassador in Italy. Her mother was a diplomat in the embassy, so she had a wide range of connections and a high status in Italy. If she were to rely on her abilities, it would not be a big problem. Mu Yaja quickly expressed his desire to go to the palace for the wedding photo shoot. Rong Xian suddenly said, "How about this? Let's meet at the entrance of the hotel at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'll bring you in, how about that?" After a pause, she looked at Yun Shishir and said, "What do you think? If the wedding photo shoot is done in the palace, the result will definitely be amazing." Yun Shishir was a little confused by her kindness and friendliness. She was so kind. Rong Xian did not know what she was thinking with such enthusiasm and flattery. "I have no objections." Yun Shishir smiled and did not say anything. Rong Xian immediately said, "Then it's decided, right? Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Okay." Yu pushed Xiao Yichen out of the room and said, "Mommy, Mui Chen said he's hungry and wants to eat cheesecake." Rong Xian thought, "Mui Chen? Who is Mui Chen?" She turned around and was shocked when she saw the two little fellows who looked like replicas standing together. In front of her, the two little guys looked exactly the same except for their height. She quickly realized that Yu had a twin brother, Mui Chen. So, Yun Shishir gave birth to a pair of cute babies for him? No wonder he was so favored. A mother's status depended on her son, and a mother's status depended on her son. It must be because she had given birth to a pair of sons for him that she was so favored. Rong Xian was surprised. The probability of giving birth to twins was extremely small. It was obvious that Mu Yaja doted on Yu very much. It was obvious that he loved the child very much. If that was the case, then his love extended to her as well. She suddenly felt that it was extremely unfair. Rong Xian was a little surprised. Shishir, it turns out that Yu has a brother." Mui Chen asked, "Mommy, who is this auntie? How come I've never seen it before?" Hearing this, Rong Xian immediately said, "Little fool, I knew your father before you were born. I grew up with him when I was little." Mui Chen was a little disgusted by her deliberately affectionate calling him little fool. He turned his face away proudly and said in a serious voice, "Don't call me little fool. No one can call me little fool except for Daddy and Mommy." His deliberate rejection made Rong Xian's face stiffen again. Soon, a weak smile appeared on her face, and it was even a little pitiful. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I called you little fool because I like you." "You like me, but you call me little fool? What kind of logic is that?" Chapter 25:39. Xiao Yichen said with some annoyance, "Mommy, I don't like this auntie. She's so annoying. Can you let her go?" Yu's eyelids twitched. This kid was a little too aggressive with his words, but he liked it. "Yi Chen," Mu Yaja scolded softly, seemingly dissatisfied with his son's attitude toward Rong Xian. "Don't be so rude." "Wu." Little Yi Chen whimpered in grievance like an aggrieved kitten. He seemed to be a little angry inside. Why is this stupid daddy of mine siding with an outsider? Rong Xian looked disappointed again, but she forced a smile and immediately said, "Brother Zhe, The child is not sensible. Don't scold him. It's inevitable that he will reject me when he sees me as a stranger. Wuxia said, the child is not sensible. You can't spoil him. After a pause, he said to Xiaoqian, Auntie Xian is a guest. As the little host, shouldn't you be more polite to the guest? His words made Yun Shishir feel a little better. Guest. Host. The distinction between the primary and the secondary couldn't be any clearer. What did this mean? This showed that Rongxian was just a guest in his heart now, except for the innocent memory, and it was the etiquette of a host to treat her politely. This also meant that she was the host, and Rongxian was just an outsider. Xiaoqian was enlightened when he heard this. He immediately understood Wuxia's position and walked over reluctantly. He stuck to Yun Shishir's side and sat on her lap obediently. Yu also stuck to Yun Shishir's side. The two little guys sat next to her as if they were her protectors. Rongxian's face was a little embarrassed when Wuxia said that Rongxian was a guest. The smile on her face quickly withered like a flower. It seemed that his attitude was very clear now that he had placed her in the position of a guest. In the end, she was overthinking things. Thinking of this, Rongxian turned to Yu and smiled. You are Yu, right? Yes. She then looked at Xiaoqian. You're Xiaoqian? Yes. The two of them really look alike. If it weren't for their different hairstyles, I would have mixed them up. Rongxian said and suddenly reached out to Yu, trying to pinch his pink cheeks. Yu immediately turned his face away in disgust. It was as if the woman in front of him was a hungry wolf. Yu? Yun Shishir suddenly smiled and said to Rongxian, although this little guy is small, he is very smart and has a temper. Not everyone will touch his face. Rongxian was a little angry. She had made it clear that she had deliberately tried to please the two little guys for Wuxia's sake. But in the end, she was not appreciated. She could not help but feel a little annoyed. I'm very narrow-minded, and not everyone can call me Yu, especially if it's someone I don't like. After a pause, Yu pretended to be generous and said, however, since you are a guest of Daddy and Mommy, I'll give Aunt Xian this special right. The little guy deliberately emphasized that she was a guest of Daddy and Mommy, implying that she was an outsider. Rongxian could no longer sit still. Chapter 2540. Rongxian was a little embarrassed. She stood up and said, it's getting late. I have to go back to deal with something. What is it? There's a traffic accident. I need to deal with it. A traffic accident? Yes. Rongxian nodded. I was rear-ended by a Bentley today. It's not over yet. Are you hurt? Wuxia asked out of concern. Rongxian shook her head. It's nothing. It's just a rear-end collision. I'm fine. That's good. Rongxian nodded and said, then I'll go now. You guys should rest early. See you tomorrow. As she spoke, she stood up, picked up her handbag, and left like a defeated general who had deserted the army. Wuxia walked her to the door and watched her leave. When he turned around, he saw that the smile on Yun Shishir's face had suddenly faded. She stood up, put her knife and fork aside, went into the room expressionlessly, and closed the door with a bang. Xiaoqian was a little flustered and worried when he saw this. He immediately ran into the room. Wuxia frowned and was about to walk over when Yu suddenly stopped him. Daddy, shouldn't you give me an explanation? Or an explanation? Explanation. Wuxia was confused. What's wrong? Who is this woman? A friend. A friend. Yu shook his head and then said unhappily, the word friend is too general. Ex-girlfriends are also friends. Old lovers are also friends. Wuxia frowned and the corner of his mouth twitched. Old lovers? Where did you learn this word? On TV. Watch less TV in the future. Wuxia said and was about to go to the room. Yu ran in front of him again and stopped him. You're not allowed to leave. The little guy's attitude was a little tough. Wuxia asked patiently, what is it now? Could this woman be Daddy's childhood sweetheart? The little fellow's keen perception shocked him. Just from the conversation, he had roughly figured out the woman's identity. Mu Yaja hummed in acknowledgement and did not deny it. Yu shrugged and said, "Actually, I don't care who this woman is, and I don't want to investigate her past. But if this woman's appearance makes Mommy unhappy, shouldn't Daddy find a way to deal with the situation?" Yu snorted coldly. Even a fool could tell that the way Auntie Xian looked at Daddy was different. It was no wonder that Mommy felt aggrieved. Another woman was showing affection for her man in front of her. She definitely couldn't stand it. Since Daddy also said that they were friends and childhood sweethearts, it should be a very old past. Daddy was not being kind at all about this. You didn't care about Mommy's feelings at all. Mu Yaja was speechless. He suddenly squatted down and looked at him. "Do you know that you're acting like the presiding judge? Will you only stop when you convict Daddy?" "Humph, you're my dear Daddy. I wouldn't dare." He couldn't help but scratch his nose. "Why wouldn't you dare? Aren't you trying to convict your dear Daddy now? You made Mommy unhappy. Of course I'm angry at you." Chapter 2541. Yu furrowed his brows and grumbled unhappily. "Daddy, why do you have so many rotten admirers? There's no end to them." After Mu Wanru left, Song Enya came. As if that wasn't enough, now there's Auntie Xian. Who knows who else will pop up after that? "Daddy, you can only blame yourself for being too charming. The line of people who like you stretches all the way to Siberia. Still, you should at least consider Mommy's feelings. You should break up with a woman like her." As a son, he lectured his father until he could not get angry at all. Mu Yaja immediately bowed his head to his father. "Daddy knows his mistake now. It's great that you can correct your mistakes." Yu then ruffled his hair. "Hurry up and coax Mommy." "Okay. Got it." Mu Yaja gently pushed open the door to the room. The lights were dim, and the moonlight outside the window spilled in. He could vaguely see Yun Shishir lying on the bed, and Xiao Yichen lying on the edge of the bed. When he heard the door open and saw him coming in, he immediately ran away. He walked over and squatted down beside the bed. The person on the bed seemed to sense his approach and pulled the blanket up a little, covering herself completely with it. Even her breathing seemed to have stopped. Mu Yaja sighed silently and reached out to lift the cup. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, clutched the blanket tightly and covered herself with it, not even letting out a breath. He asked in a deep voice, "Madam, are you angry with me again?" "No," Yun Shishir said sullenly, but her tone was extremely awkward. She was obviously sulking. Mu Yaja pondered for a moment, not knowing how to explain it. He had also vaguely sensed that something was wrong with Yun Shishir's expression during dinner tonight. She was a little nauseous and a little nauseous. He knew in his heart that her abnormal behavior tonight was probably related to Rong Xian. He could also tell that Rong Xian's attitude toward Yun Shishir was not very friendly. Both women were very possessive. Rong Xian was his childhood sweetheart. Perhaps, if that accident had not happened, the Rongs would not have migrated to Italy. Based on his character, perhaps, there would not have been an accident like Yun Shishir's. However, there were no ifs in life. They had missed each other by a freak combination of factors. One's past, the other's present and future. The two secretly competed with each other. Neither was willing to give in to the other, but they were both jealous of each other. For a moment, he really was at a loss for an explanation. She felt that it was best not to explain this matter. The more she tried to explain, the worse it would get. Instead, she would feel that there was something going on between them, but that did not mean that. Yunz's SSSS. He sat on the edge of the bed and lay down next to her. Rong Xian emigrated with her family when she was 10 years old, he said faintly. From that day, ours I have been I of the two. Moreover, what happened more than 10 years ago has become the past. Today's meeting was also unexpected. Don't misunderstand that I came to Italy especially for her. It was difficult for him to explain so seriously. After racking his brains, he finally managed to come up with an explanation that wasn't really an explanation. Yun Shishir did not say a word. At this moment, she felt a little upset. She did not know what she was upset about. She only knew that she was probably jealous of Rong Xian. Chapter 2542. Was it because of his possessiveness? She wanted to find out more about the past between him and Rongxian. For example, Rongxian said that they were childhood sweethearts. Childhood sweethearts. That was an extremely ambiguous term. The fact that they were childhood sweethearts proved that they used to be very close. Although they were separated when they were 10 and 12 years old, she couldn't help but wonder how close they were that he, who had always been estranged from women, didn't refuse Rongxian's passionate hug. After being separated for more than 10 years, this woman seemed to have a lot of emotions, but his expression was calm. It was unknown if he was really calm, or if he was deliberately hiding the surging emotions in his heart. Childhood sweethearts. It should be a very deep memory. But if Rongxian hadn't emigrated, then according to this man's character, then what about her? She suddenly didn't dare to think about it. If you loved someone deeply, you would want to be the only one in his life. If you were more extreme, you would even want to be his destined lover. However, the sudden appearance of Rongxian immediately disrupted her plans. She suddenly felt a little unconfident. Today it was Rongxian. What about tomorrow? Would there be other childhood sweethearts? This man was so outstanding, so there should be many women who liked him. There should be many women like Rongxian, right? The more this was the case, the more she felt a loss of confidence. Perhaps she was feeling insecure. Therefore, she was eager to know his feelings for Rongxian. While her thoughts were running wild, Yun Shishir suddenly heard Wuxia get up and walk slowly to the balcony. She heard the sound of the door opening. At the same time, she felt a little surprised and a little lonely. This man had finally lost his patience with her. It seemed that he rarely coaxed her. She couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Rongxian had said before that when she was wronged and cried sadly, he would gently stay by her side, coax her patiently, and even sing for her. But, previously, when she asked him to sing at the KTV, he looked very reluctant. She begged him in every possible way, but he didn't sing a single song. It was so unfair. Just thinking about it made him feel dejected. Right now, she was just throwing a tantrum. As long as he was patient and coaxed a little, she wouldn't be so willful. Yun Shishir suddenly lifted the quilt in disappointment, but suddenly heard Wuxia's calm voice from the balcony. Xian, I have something to tell you. When Yun Shishir heard this, her expression changed. She walked to the balcony and looked through the floor-to-ceiling window at the back of the man standing on the balcony. She frowned in confusion. Tomorrow's schedule is cancelled. Why? On the other end, Rongxian asked in surprise, Brother Zhe, didn't we make an agreement before? Don't tell me you don't want to go to the palace for your wedding photo shoot? There's no need to go through so much trouble, Wuxia said casually. Why would you go through so much trouble? Rongxian smiled and said hurriedly, many people want to film in the palace, but they are not qualified to go in. However, as long as I say the word, the entire palace will be unimpeded. Chapter 2543. Wuxia said, if I want to get in, I don't have to go through you. These words were a blatant rejection of him. I don't have to go through you. What is this? Rongxian had mixed feelings. She didn't know what that woman said to him after she left. Why was he so cold to her? Through the floor-to-ceiling window, Yun Shishir could vaguely hear the estrangement in his words. She was a little surprised. It turned out that this man was not impatient to coax her. He knew that no matter how he coaxed her, if this matter was not completely resolved, it would definitely leave a gap in her heart. So what he decided to do was to completely remove this gap. Therefore, he decided to keep a distance from Rongxian. This man had always been swift and decisive. Once he thought of something, he immediately put it into action. He didn't care how much pain his words would cause Rongxian and didn't have the slightest hesitation. Yun Shishir was his wife, so he should be concerned about her feelings. Other than that, other feelings were not so important. Rongxian was stunned and said a little hesitantly, Brother Zhe, you're being too polite. She suddenly said, are you free now? Why don't we talk alone? Just now, because Yun Shishir was a third party, there were some things that she couldn't open up to him. Therefore, she invited him over the phone, hoping that he could meet her alone. After losing contact for more than 10 years, she had thought that she had completely forgotten about him. However, now that they met again, from the moment they met unexpectedly, the infatuation hidden in the depths of her memory gushed out again. Rongxian believed that this was fate, so there were many things that she wanted to tell him. Therefore, she summoned her courage, put aside her ladylike demeanor, and took the initiative to ask to meet him. Wuxia frowned but didn't speak for a long time. What's wrong? Is it inconvenient? If it's not convenient, I'll pick you up. It's not inconvenient. Wuxia paused, then smiled and said, My wife doesn't like me to meet with other women alone. Rongxian was completely silent on the other end of the phone. From the phone, she could vaguely hear her gasp, which was followed by a long period of suffocation. It seemed that she had been beaten black and blue by this sentence. Why must you be so cold? Brother Zhe, don't you think you're being too heartless to me? These words are too hurtful. Wuxia smiled faintly and said without hiding anything, Xian, I know your feelings for me. However, this affection was broken 17 years ago, on the day you immigrated to the United States. But now, I have a wife that I love deeply and a happy family. As a man, I have to consider my wife's feelings. Rongxian was stunned. His straightforwardness was somewhat unacceptable. 17 years ago, you disappeared from my life. You emigrated to Italy with your family. I was indeed very sad, very sad. I even thought about applying to a famous university in Italy and following you to Italy. However, when I was 20 years old, I took over the affairs of the Mu family. From then on, your name completely faded from my life. Rongxian couldn't help but confess hurriedly, But you have never faded from my life. Wuxia smiled and said, This is different. Chapter 2544. Rongxian couldn't help but confess, But you've never faded from my life. Wuxia smiled. That's different. What's the difference? Rongxian asked eagerly. Wuxia said slowly, Because you've faded from my life. Rongxian was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Her heart ached so much that she almost suffocated. What could be more heart-wrenching than this sentence? However, what he said next made her feel as if she had been struck by lightning. From the moment she appeared, you no longer left any traces behind. There was a long silence. Rongxian pinched her palms and mustered up her courage to ask, Brother Zhe, I just want to ask you one question. She carefully probed. Have you ever had feelings for me? Wuxia pondered for a moment. How can you say that I've fallen for you when I was young? How can it not be? Was he admitting that he had been tempted before? Rongxian's heart, which had been full of despair, was rekindled. So what if it was more than a decade ago? After so many years, I've never forgotten you. I'm married. Wuxia calmly reminded her of this fact again. It was a deliberate coldness. You know my character. Once I've decided on someone or something, I'll never change my mind. Then if Rongxian was at a loss, if you hadn't met her, if she didn't exist, There's no if. He interrupted her, not giving her any hope. Just answer me directly. Rongxian insisted. If you hadn't met her, if this woman hadn't appeared in your life, would it still be possible between us? Wuxia gave her an answer almost without any hesitation. No. Words of love had to be short, and the feelings had to be deep. This was his attitude toward relationships, and he was resolute to the end. He didn't give her any hope or leeway. He directly shattered her fantasy with his own hands. This can't be true. Rongxian's voice trembled. Have you never liked me? No. Wuxia's coldness, with just 2 words, instantly put her in a bottomless ice cellar. The other end of the line quickly hung up and displayed a busy tone. Wuxia hung up the phone expressionlessly. When he turned around, he saw Yun Shishir standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring at him in a daze. Seeing that he had finished his call and was walking in, she immediately clarified, I didn't eavesdrop on purpose. The more she said this, the more guilty she felt. She felt like she was eavesdropping. Wuxia raised his eyebrows. You heard everything? She nodded awkwardly, feeling a little embarrassed. Although she didn't hear what Rong Xian said, she heard everything he said just now. Mu Yaja took a step closer to her and leaned over slightly. Looking into her eyes, he asked gently, "Are you still angry with me now?" Yun Shirshir immediately explained, "I'm not angry. You're still denying it?" Mu Yaja couldn't help but scratch her nose. "When you're angry, you like to hide from me, like a little turtle hiding in the corner. And you're still denying it?" Yun Shirshir looked away awkwardly and muttered, "I'm just a little sad." "Sad about what?" "Nothing." Chapter 25:45. "I'm going to wash up." After that, she walked towards the bathroom. The man suddenly grabbed her wrist, pulled her into his embrace, and hugged her from behind. "Shirshir, don't be angry. Shirshir, don't be angry." His euphemistic tone seemed to be trying to please her. Usually, in front of outsiders, he would introduce her as wife or wife, but in private, he liked to call her Shirshir, especially when they were having sex. He hugged her tightly and whispered in her ear over and over again, "Shirshir, Shirshir." She was so happy that she felt numb. Often, when he called her name so gently, she would lose all strength to resist in an instant. "Shirshir, even if I had feelings for Rong Xian, they died more than 10 years ago. She was indeed my childhood sweetheart, but I was young and ignorant. I couldn't even tell what love was. Don't be angry because of this and punish me in a disguised way." "I'm not angry." Yun Shirshir bit her lip and said quietly, "I'm just a little jealous." "Jealous?" Mu Yaja frowned. "Jealous? What was there to be jealous of?" When it came to jealousy, Rong Xian was jealous of her. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and said, "Maybe I'm too emotional." She suddenly turned around and looked up at him. She said casually, "Do you know, I'm actually very jealous of her. When we were young, she was able to accompany you and share so many memories with me. When I heard her talk about the past with you when you were young, I felt bitter and envious. I even started to wonder if you would still be together with her if I didn't appear. Even if there are memories, it's all in the past. Have you ever liked her?" Yun Shirshir suddenly asked. Mu Yaja frowned. He suddenly felt that women were really interesting. Just now, Rong Xian had also persistently asked him if he had ever liked her. Now, she was also relentlessly pursuing this topic. To a man, whether or not he had liked or loved before was not important. Only a relationship that had a beginning and an end was worth cherishing. The past was not worth mentioning at all. Women liked to explore the past. As for him, he cherished the present and the future even more. He didn't want to look back on the past. However, he had no choice but to answer her question. Otherwise, her imagination would run wild again. This woman was always so insecure, and he, as her man, naturally had the responsibility to comfort her. This question is very tricky. It requires a strong imagination to give you a satisfactory answer. He gave such an answer. Yun Shirshir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of answer is that? Because there are no ifs in this world. Mu Yaja paused for a moment before continuing. You're asking if, but there's no such if. You just need to know that I've already set my mind on you and that it has to be you. No matter who appears, it's a fact that cannot be changed. So, it's meaningless for you to ask if. Well. Chapter 25:46. Mu Yaja pursed his lips. Leng Jun couldn't help but say, if I were to say that, it would be a little biased. I'm not an emperor who can't have multiple wives and concubines. If I like someone, I can only give it to one person. What's the difference in number? Yun Shirshir couldn't stop laughing all of a sudden. Were those words of love? She stared at him seriously, looking at the curve of his lips. His lips were thin and cold, but because of this sentence that sounded like words of love, it was extremely gentle. Yun Shirshir suddenly hugged him emotionally and threw herself into his arms. Burying her smiling face in his chest, she said in a guilty and coquettish manner, I'm sorry. I was too narrow-minded. I couldn't be so calculative over such a small matter. As she said that, she rubbed her face against his chest like a spoiled kitten, languid and coquettish. I'm not angry anymore. And I won't be petty anymore. I like how petty you are. Mu Yaja gently stroked her hair and cupped her face with his broad palm. He lowered his head slightly and gave her a kiss on the corner of her lips. At least this shows that you care about me a lot, Of course I care. Yun Shirshir blushed and said, I care about you, no matter how big or small it is. I don't even care about a strand of your hair. Originally, Rong Xian's sudden appearance had cast a shadow over her heart. However, his words had lifted the clouds in her heart, and she had returned from a land of ice and snow to a sunny day. Even her somewhat gloomy heartbeat recovered and became as warm as before. Did this mean that they had reconciled? Yun Shirshir silently cursed in her heart, but a sweet smile appeared on her face. That night, after the lights were turned off, he pressed her against his body and was especially passionate when it came to making love. This man would never say words of love that would make one's heart beat faster. Therefore, in bed, he showed unparalleled passion and put all his shameful words of love into action. What an introverted and profound man! When he held her in his arms, so many affectionate words were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't speak frankly. Thus, he used these feelings that were difficult to speak of in the context of love. Amidst his passion, he hugged the back of her neck and helped her sit on top of him. He hugged her shoulders and pressed them against the side of his shoulders. He leaned close to her ear and kept saying her name. Shirshir. Shirshir. The tip of his heart was so happy that it felt numb. After the charm, he hugged her and buried his face in her neck. He pecked at the fine beads of sweat on her chest and felt every inch of her trembling skin. He closed his eyes and said softly, I will love you for the rest of my life. This was probably the deepest love. She had already become his heart, his ribs, the softest part of his body that he wanted to protect. I will love you all my life. He said this sentence silently. His voice was not loud, but it was very deep. Just like the impression he gave people, he was mature and steady. Yun Shirshir hugged him. At this moment, she was so happy that she didn't know what to do. To be able to have such a relationship, she had no regrets in this life. To be able to hold his hand for the rest of her life, she had no regrets in this life. She imagined that when the two of them were old and gray, they could still hold hands like this and have no regrets in this life. Chapter 25:47. Yun Shirshir woke up very early in the morning. She finally managed to coax the two little lads out of bed. But she also managed to coax a certain man out of bed. After Mu Yaja sat up, he lowered his head sleepily and yawned. This was a stark difference from his usual spirited appearance. Serves him right. He must have exhausted himself last night. She was different from him. Although the journey was tiring, he was the one who took care of everything. As for her, all she had to do was put on her wedding gown and take photos. As for the rest, she would leave it to him. She had caught up on sleep on the plane. This man, on the other hand, had indeed been too busy for the past few days. In the spare time during the wedding photo shoot, he still had to open his laptop and go through the financial reports and important documents sent by Lu Jinyu. He was busy for half the night. He had done it with her many times last night. However, men were different from women. She had already gotten used to his rhythm. In addition, he had exerted more effort last night, so she wasn't too intense. On the other hand, he was busy and couldn't bear to stop until the wee hours of the morning. Although she was also a little tired, after a good night's sleep, she was still in high spirits with anticipation for the wedding photo shoot. Yun Shirshir said coldly, "Who asked you to not know how to control yourself?" The journey was so tiring, and last night, Mu Yaja glanced at her from the corner of his eyes and suddenly reached out to hold her waist. With a flip, he pinned her under him and snorted coldly. "Aren't you thinking too much?" What? Yun Shirshir was shocked by his sudden attack. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she asked, "What do you mean by thinking too much? Are you suspecting that I overdid it last night and exhausted myself?" "Isn't that the case?" Yun Shirshir blinked slyly. She looked like a kitten who was having an affair. "Won't you know if I overdid it when you try?" As Mu Yaja spoke, he led her hand to his erection. Yun Shirshir was taken aback by the scalding temperature. "What? Why was he so energetic early in the morning? Because of the man's blatant provocation. Her face immediately turned red with embarrassment. Stop fooling around. Stop messing around. Wuxia laughed and curled his lips. You're the one who's provoking me. I didn't. Isn't that so? Are you questioning my stamina? Yun Shirshir stuck out her tongue silently in her heart. Sure enough, I can't easily provoke a man. No matter how steady a man was, when faced with this provocation, he would immediately take it seriously. Even if it sounded like a joke, men can also be indifferent. Moreover, he was such a proud man. Wuxia coldly snorted. My physical strength is more than enough to deal with 10 of you. Do you want to try? No. Yun Shirshir pouted. I was just joking. Why are you taking it so seriously? There are some things that you can't joke about, Wuxia said seriously with a serious expression. Especially in this aspect. All right, I won't do it in the future, but you're not young anymore. It's kinda me to remind you to control yourself a little. Old. A certain man raised his eyebrows. He was 29 years old. Not yet 30 years old. He was still a good young man. How did she make it sound like he wasn't young anymore? Chapter 25:48. Yun Shirshir thought to herself. If things were to continue like this, she wondered if he would still be able to maintain such good stamina when he reached middle age. Her face instantly heated up at the thought of this. How embarrassing. Wasn't she overthinking things? Wuxia seemed to be able to read minds. He immediately sensed what she was thinking and said in a low voice, Don't worry. Even when I'm 80 years old, I'll still fulfill your wishes. Yun Shirshir was speechless. Did he have to be so direct? Where are we going to take our wedding photos today? She quickly changed the topic. However, her self-righteous wit couldn't fool a certain shrewd man. Don't try to change the topic. Wuxia snorted coldly. Do you think I'm so easily fooled? Don't be so serious. There's no point in being serious. I don't mean anything by it. You're the one who's thinking too much. A certain little woman threw the burden away. She rolled her eyes slightly and smiled. Otherwise, people will think that you're the one who flew into a rage out of humiliation. The man slapped her but gently and snorted. You're asking for a beating. Be good. Stop fooling around. Be a good girl and get up to wash your face and brush your teeth. No. The man threw a childish tantrum. He indulged in her body and didn't want to get up. He thought to himself that it was still early. Should he take advantage of such a beautiful morning to enjoy some morning dessert? Yun Shirshir could tell that he was up to no good. She immediately said, You and Shaoi Chen are already up. If they come in and see you, they'll make fun of you again. This sentence had the effect of an absolute deterrent. Those two mischievous little rascals. They were always ruining his plans. Hence, he stopped fooling around. He pressed her down and kissed her a few times, reluctant to part with her. Then he nimbly got up from the bed. After washing his face and brushing his teeth, he felt refreshed. The hotel delivered an exquisite breakfast. The family of 4 sat in the dining room and enjoyed the wonderful breakfast time. As Yu gracefully enjoyed her breakfast, she asked calmly, Mommy, are we going to Venice for our wedding photo shoot today? Yun Shirshir was a little surprised. How did you know? Who told you that? Daddy said so. Yun Shirshir cast a puzzled look at a certain calm man. Today's target is Venice? Yes. Wuxia looked up at her. Why, you don't like it? I like it. Yun Shirshir was overjoyed. I used to yearn for Venice. The scenery must be beautiful, right? Not bad. I don't come to Italy often. Haven't you been flying all over the world? You should have been to quite a few countries. Yes, but that's a business trip, not a vacation. Most of the time, I'm in the hotel. If I'm not in a meeting, I'm meeting important people. There's basically no time to go sightseeing. I see. Yun Shirshir took a bite of her sandwich and fantasized. The scenery should be good, but it's a pity that we're in a hurry. Shaoi Chen said, If you like, you can set aside an extra day for sightseeing. Daddy will definitely agree, right? Can I? Yun Shirshir asked for his opinion. If you like, there's nothing that can't be done. His doting reply made her feel much happier. This man. Chapter 2549. After breakfast, the four of them cleaned up and left the house happily. They had agreed to meet at the entrance of the hotel with Mankey. However, when Yun Shirshir walked out of the hotel with Mu Yaja's arm, she saw a Maserati parked at the entrance. Her eyelids twitched violently as she recalled the glimpse she had seen the previous afternoon. If she was not mistaken, this car belonged to that woman. Soon her guess was confirmed. As soon as they walked out of the hotel, a woman got out of the Maserati. This woman was none other than Rong Xian. Why was it her again? Why is this woman still haunting me like a ghost? Yun Shirshir's originally bright and cheerful mood sank to rock bottom in an instant. Her face sank as well. If she did not remember wrongly, the man had already laid his cards on the table with her last night. No matter how heartless he was, he had spilled everything. Since he was so straightforward with his words, this woman must have suffered quite a bit of heartache. Right? Why was she so shamelessly sticking to him now? Could it be that her heart had not given up yet? Had his words not been cruel enough? Had he not been straightforward enough? Or could it be that his words had triggered her desire to plunder? Yun Shirshir glanced at Mu Yaja, who was next to her, and saw that his face had also become a little gloomy at this moment. Mu Yaja stared at Rong Xian with a gloomy face. Rong Xian walked over to them as if nothing had happened. It was as if she had completely forgotten what Mu Yaja had said the day before. She had a gentle smile on her face, which was as elegant as it could be. She was so elegant that it made people wonder if she was heartless. If it had been any other woman, her heart would have been broken when the man she loved laid his cards on the table so straightforwardly. However, she acted as if nothing had happened. Rong Xian walked over and smiled at Mu Yaja. She greeted him. "You're so early, but I'm even earlier than you. I arrived at 8:30. In fact, she had arrived at 8 o'clock. It was all for the sake of waiting for them. That's right. Did he really think that she would give up completely just because he said those cruel words? Impossible. Since they had met, she stubbornly believed that this was fate arranged by the heavens. As she spoke, she ignored Mu Yaja's gloomy expression and shifted her gaze to Yun Shirshir. She then intimately walked up to her and held her hand as affectionately as if they were sisters. "Shirshir, I heard from Brother Zhe that you're not planning to go to the palace for the shoot. Is that right?" Yun Shirshir didn't know what to say. Rong Xian smiled and suddenly said regretfully, "What a pity! When I went back last night, I made arrangements for you guys. Brother Kaja called to say that you guys decided not to go to the palace for the shoot. He felt sorry for you guys." "There's nothing to regret," Yun Shirshir said. "We've decided to go to Venice for the wedding shoot." "Venice? That's not bad. The scenery in Venice is beautiful, and it's a world-famous city. It's a romantic choice for the wedding shoot." After a pause, she pretended to be generous and asked, "Do you need a guide? It's rare for you guys to come to Italy. You should get together more while you're doing the wedding shoot." "I don't think we need one," Yun Shirshir said bluntly. "Our schedule is tight. After the shoot, we have to go back to China." She was ruthless and direct, leaving no room for negotiation. Chapter 2550. Rong Xian didn't expect her to be so determined. She tried to persuade her to stay. "Italy is a good place for sightseeing, and it's the off-season now. There aren't many people there. It's rare for you to come to Italy. Don't you think it's too hasty to leave after shooting?" Yun Shirshir said resolutely, "I don't think it's rushed at all. Both he and I have work to do. We're taking advantage of the holiday to take wedding photos, so it won't take too long." Compared to her silence last night, her attitude today was much tougher. Rong Xian couldn't help but feel shocked. Her strength and enmity towards her couldn't be any more obvious. She didn't know what this woman had said to Mu Yaja, but as soon as she left last night, he immediately called her and said that he wanted to cut off all ties with her. His tough tone seemed to indicate that he couldn't even maintain the friendship between friends. It must be her. She must be the one behind this. Rong Xian thought bitterly, but she was getting more and more excited. Suddenly, she smiled and turned to Wuxia to ask for his opinion. Brother Zhe, you don't have to be so polite. I grew up in Italy, so I'm very familiar with this country. As the host, I naturally have to give you a warm welcome and do my duty as a host. If you leave in such a hurry, it'll make us seem estranged. If word gets out, people will say that I'm neglecting you. I can't do that. It's useless to talk to him. Yun Shishir suddenly said. He's here because of my temperament. If I want to stay here, he will postpone his schedule and accompany me for a few more days. If I don't want to stay, he won't stay either. Rong Xian was shocked by her straightforwardness and undisguised attitude. All along, when she spoke to this woman, she had always concealed her feelings. Even if she hated her, she didn't show it on her face. However, things were different now. Yun Shishir's face was full of disgust for her. Anyone with a little insight could see that she hated Rong Xian to the extreme. Why? Rong Xian saw that Yun Shishir didn't hide her dislike for her at all, and a weak and aggrieved look quickly appeared on her face. You don't seem to like me very much. Yun Shishir's lips curled into a contemptuous smile as she intimately hooked her arm through his. That's right. I really don't like to see you. Let's go back as soon as possible. Out of sight. Out of mind. Why? You don't like to see me. There must be a reason, right? Rong Xian asked with a forced smile. Yun Shishir cocked a brow. You don't need a reason to hate or like someone. There is no reason. Is there? Is no reason. Rong Xian looked at Yun Shishir. She smiled, pretending to be affectionate. Shishir, I think you must misunderstand something is wrong with me. Shishir. Was it because of the conversation between Brother Zhe and I yesterday? Did it make you uncomfortable? But don't get it. I was just too excited to see a friend I haven't seen for many years. So, if I said something I shouldn't have, please don't take it to heart. Brother Zhe is like a big brother to me. It's not what you think. Chapter 25:51. Yun Shishir's smile stiffened. She had thought that after what she had said, Rong Xian would be humiliated and leave angrily. However, that was not the case. Instead, she smiled and spoke kindly to her. Her warm smile and guilty gaze made it difficult for anyone to find fault with her. Her expression of being wronged and forced smile was flawless, as if she had suffered a great grievance. She looked so pitiful that anyone who saw her would feel pity for her. It made her seem too mean, didn't it? Wuxia frowned slightly and finally said, Rong Xian, don't be ridiculous. Rong Xian noticed how he addressed her. Rong Xian was an extremely unfamiliar name. In the past, he had always called her Xian Xian. Now, he had changed the way he addressed her. Unknowingly, the distance between the two of them had widened. Her shoulders trembled and her thick eyelashes suddenly fluttered. A teardrop suddenly rolled out of her eye socket uncontrollably. Brother Zhe. She suddenly stepped forward emotionally and forced herself to maintain her elegant demeanor. She smiled bitterly with tears in her eyes. Last night, when you called me, I heard everything you said. I thought about it all night and cried all night. I've really thought it through. I used to have high hopes and expectations for you, but now that you have your own happiness and a perfect marriage, I sincerely wish you all the best. I have no other thoughts. However, Shishir seems to be very hostile towards me. This is not what I wanted to see. She paused and sobbed again. From now on, I'll be settling down in Italy. And you have your own life too. We can only see each other once. After this separation, we don't know when we'll meet again. Just take it as a memorial to the past. Don't tell me you're stingy with giving me such an opportunity. Yun Shishir clenched her fists in anger when she heard this. This woman was shameless to the extreme. She couldn't figure out what this woman was trying to do. Since she had already made things clear, why was she still clinging on to Wuxia? Was there some ulterior motive? No matter how hard she racked her brains, she still couldn't think of a reason. However, when she saw Wuxia's impatient expression, she suddenly smiled and said, We're going to take our wedding photos today. Do you want to come along? Of course. Rong Xian smiled through her tears and said, You definitely need help to take wedding photos. I can help you lift your dress or touch up your makeup sometimes. All right, since you insist, then let's go together. I don't have any objections. She seemed to be taking a step back, but in fact, she had her own little scheme. No matter which woman wanted to play tricks, sow discord, or fan the flames, when she took a step back, she was also taking a step back. Since she couldn't see clearly, then she would make her see clearly. Let's go together then. A public display of affection? She had never been willing to show off her love. She always felt like she was putting on a show. But, since someone wanted to see it, then she would show it off. The hotel had arranged for 2 cars. One of them was for luggage and could seat 3 people. The 2 cars had a total of 6 people. Chapter 25:52. Yun Shishir offered to team up with Rong Xian. Obviously, she was still wary of her and did not trust her to be alone with Mu Yaja or one of the 2 little ones. Rong Xian gladly accepted. On the way, Yun Shishir and Rong Xian sat in the back seat while Yu sat in the front passenger seat. Yun Shishir buckled her seat belt for her and the car set off. After a long silence in the car, Rong Xian finally broke the silence. Shishir, don't you and Brother Zhe need some privacy? What? Rong Xian asked. You 2 are always together. Don't you get tired of it? Not really, Yun Shishir said. He and I are usually very busy with work. Other than at night, we are busy with our own careers. However, as long as he is free, he will put everything aside and stay by my side. Then wouldn't you have less privacy? He doesn't need privacy. Rong Xian's face stiffened and she changed the topic. Speaking of careers, what do you do for a living? I'm an actress. An actress? Rong Xian was even more surprised. Shishir is a big star. I'm not a big star. It's just a hobby. Rong Xian said quietly. The domestic entertainment industry is a mess. Shishir, you must keep your nose clean and don't get involved with those messy practices. The entertainment industry is a big dive at. The relationships in the industry are very messy. Brother Zhe values these things very much. Don't make a mistake. Yun Shishir sneered in her heart. Rong Xian pretended to be considerate of her, but her words were so harsh and harsh. It was obvious that she was targeting her. Yun Shishir looked at Rong Xian's hypocritical face and smiled slightly. Thank you for the reminder. Shishir, how did you and Brother Zhe meet? She suddenly asked curiously, not knowing what her intentions were. Do you still remember the scene when you first met? As soon as her voice fell, Yun Shishir's face changed. The first time they met? To be precise, the first time she met him was probably a very accidental situation. She had been fired from the company, and when she was returning home with some documents, she was accidentally hit by his car that was coming over. That was the first time she saw him. However, strictly speaking, the 2 of them met for the first time in a seaside villa, on a very unfamiliar bed. At that time, he was her employer and she was the surrogate mother on the contract. She was willing to sell her body for 5 million yuan just to give birth to a child for the Mu family. Because it was not suitable for artificial insemination, natural insemination was used instead. At first, she was extremely resistant, but the arrow was already on the bowstring, and there was no way out. She vaguely remembered the first time they met. She was lying on the bed with a red silk covering her face. She heard the sound of heavy footsteps outside the door. Pushing open the door, accompanied by the cold night wind, he walked in and sat on the bed. At that time, he was probably scrutinizing her carefully, had have no feelings for her. It was as if he was just an employer looking at his prey. Then, without any more pleasantries, he asked her to spread out her body to welcome him. Yun Shishir furrowed her brows. What a terrible first meeting. Chapter 25:53. If possible, she did not want to recall it. Rong Xian was a little confused by her cold response and asked curiously, You don't remember? It's been too long. I don't think I remember. Rong Xian replied carelessly. Speaking of which, I don't remember the first time I met him either. That's because I grew up with him. When I was young and ignorant, he was already in my memories. Rong Xian began to recount the story. Because the Rong family and the Mu family had a good relationship, they lived close to each other. Therefore, the two of them grew up together. They were childhood sweethearts and knew each other very well. I really didn't expect Brother Zhe to get married so early. Rongxian paused and suddenly asked, "Did you and Brother Zhe get married?" "Married?" "Yes." Rongxian nodded and smiled innocently. "He is the successor of the Mu Group and the successor of Dishing Financial Group. As his wife, you must be the daughter of a prestigious family. I still don't know which family you are from." "The Yun family." "The Yun family?" Rongxian was lost in thought. "I don't think I've ever heard of the Yun family in the capital. I'm not from a prestigious family." After a pause, Yun Shirshir said calmly, "I'm just a child of an ordinary family. I'm not from a prestigious family." "A commoner?" Rongxian suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Yun Shirshir frowned and stared at her unhappily. Rongxian quickly apologized. She did not know whether she had exclaimed because of a momentary loss of composure or if she had done it on purpose. She said guiltily, "Shirshir, I've been abroad for a long time, so I don't mean it. Please don't take it to heart. I'm a commoner." Yun Shirshir said bluntly. "But what's so surprising about a commoner?" "I didn't mean to belittle a commoner," Rongxian hurriedly explained. "I just find it unbelievable. According to the rules of the Mu family, it's forbidden to marry a commoner." "Forbidden?" Yun Shirshir noticed this word. That's right. The bigger a clan was, the more they paid attention to matching the social status of the two families. The Mu family was the wealthiest family in the capital. They had a big family business and a deep foundation. As the heir, the Mu family was especially particular about Brother Zhe's fiancée. Regarding family background, the Mu family had strict requirements. They had to go back 3 generations and get to the bottom of it. However, when I migrated to Italy, I still knew about some of the Mu family's activities during those years. At that time, she had heard that Brother Zhe's grandfather seemed to have stood his ground and picked a girl of unknown origin to be Brother Zhe's fiancée. The whole Mu family is against it. I heard that her name is Mu Wanru or something. Yun Shirshir's eyelids twitched violently. However, this marriage didn't happen after that. Yun Shirshir asked coldly, "Could it be that the rich and powerful place a lot of emphasis on matching families?" "Yes, very much." Chapter 2554. In my eyes, that piece of clothing is nothing, but for him, it's a month's worth of expenses. After a pause, Rongxian smiled and said, "There's not much surprise in being in a relationship with a commoner like him. He spent an entire semester's worth of living expenses and could only buy a box of foundation from me. There will never be any surprises in a relationship like this. It will be as plain as water, and I will have to adapt to his values, consumption, and lifestyle. Therefore, even if we love each other, we will still be defeated by the cruel reality." Yun Shirshir was stunned when she heard this. "So, Shirshir, I really envy you. I can tell that Brother Zhe truly loves you. With his kind of life, he has always lived a life of luxury. But in order to adapt to you, he must have lowered his status to adapt to your life and your values. He must love you very much." Yu heard this but remained silent. Deep down, she found it funny. Was love really like this? Were values based on material conditions always right? Whether it was love or marriage, could it be that what a woman really wanted was just beautiful branded clothes, bags that cost millions, beautiful jewelry, and desires that could be satisfied with money? If love was really that simple, then it was really worth celebrating. In fact, whether it was love or marriage, as long as two people worked hard to integrate into each other, there would be enough tacit understanding. As long as there was love, there were no rules that could not be broken. As long as there was love, there was nothing that could not be overcome. Daddy was indeed a rich man, but after he got together with Mommy, he did not lower himself and adapted a lot for Mommy's sake. However, Rongxian saw that Daddy was enjoying it. It was not because he was great, but because he loved him enough. Yun Shirshir suddenly sneered. "What are you hinting at?" Rongxian widened her eyes and hurriedly said, "Shirshir, I'm not hinting at anything. You're thinking too much again. Please don't mind me. I'm just being frank." "Oh, I thought you were hinting that I don't have a background and status and that I'm not good enough for him." How could that be? Rong Xian laughed dryly. I didn't think that. In fact, I think you're great. Great. I think your courage is commendable. After all, for the sake of love, you're willing to break the rules and obsess over it. That's really amazing. I admire you. Yun Shirshir did not reply immediately. Yu suddenly turned his head, and with a meaningful smile on his face, he casually said, Auntie Xian Xian, I admire you, too. Hearing this, Rong Xian couldn't help but feel happy. She thought that the little boy was going to praise her, so she raised her head slightly and asked, Oh, what do you admire about me? The boy smiled gracefully. I admire your thick skin. Ahem. Yun Shirshir choked on her son's words and coughed. The expression on Rong Xian's face suddenly froze. She was gritting her teeth with a faint smile. What? Of course, Rong Xian of Daddy. Rong of Xian, you don't seem to know your limits at all. You keep sticking to Daddy and Mommy. Don't you think you're an eyesore? Rong Xian's face suddenly froze, and the muscles on her face twitched. This kid, what was he talking about? Chapter 25:55. Oh, but it's only natural that you don't have such self-awareness. That's why I said I admire your shamelessness. Yu paused for a moment, then said in disgust, Daddy and Mommy finally have some alone time together, and you're still clinging to them. You're really a wet blanket. Rong Xian was finally completely enraged. No one had ever humiliated her like this before. She had never been humiliated by a child. She immediately tugged at the corners of her lips and sneered, Shameless? I think you're the uneducated one. However, it's understandable that you're uneducated. After all, your mother is a commoner. How good can her son be? Although you inherited your handsome face from Brother Zhe, your temper is just like your mother's. Before she could finish speaking, only a pa sound could be heard. Without any warning, Yun Shirshir raised her hand and gave her a tight slap across the face. Rong Xian, I'm warning you. Watch your mouth when you talk to my son. Rong Xian covered her burning cheek and stared at Yun Shirshir in disbelief. Her eyes were full of anger. You hit me? Yun Shirshir said coldly. Your mouth is dirty. You deserve to be hit. Rong Xian was completely furious. She raised her hand and was about to slap her back. Yun Shirshir, on the other hand, was quick to react. She held her hand tightly, and no matter how much she struggled, it was to no avail. Perhaps out of anger, she used a lot of strength. Rong Xian gritted her teeth and struggled, but she couldn't break free. She couldn't help but say angrily, Yun Shirshir, let go of me. Rong Xian, I'm warning you, behave yourself. Yun Shirshir sneered as she inched closer to her. Sweeping her expressionless gaze across her, she sneered. Why? Just because you're his childhood sweetheart, you feel smug, right? I'm a commoner, so my courage is commendable? Then what are you? You know that he has a family and his own happiness, but you're still clinging to him with ulterior motives. What are your intentions? Yun Shirshir, Rong Xian shouted at her indignantly. You don't deserve him at all. Don't deserve him? You're just a commoner. Don't you know the rules of the rich? It's taboo for a noble to marry a commoner. Who do you think you are? How can you deserve Brother Zhe? If he were to marry the daughter of another prestigious family, I wouldn't have any complaints. But why is it that he married a commoner? Why you? Rong Xian poured out all her resentment and anger as if she was venting her anger. Her face immediately flushed red. She was so agitated that she started to ramble. You said you're an actress? Ha! How can a woman in the entertainment industry? From what I see, you must have cultivated some kind of bewitching technique and bewitched him. That's why he's so infatuated with you. Slap. Yun Xian Xian's Rong Tian Rong Xian. Rong Xian was slapped in the face. She felt so wronged that tears flowed down her cheeks. Why did you hit me? Because of your cheap mouth. Yun Shirshir coldly reached out to grab her by the collar and pulled her toward her. She enunciated each word clearly. I want to remind you of one thing. In this world, no woman other than me is worthy of him. No woman is more worthy of him than I am. Do you understand? Her words were powerful and bold. Chapter 25:56. Wow, wow, wow. Yu Yu's eyes sparkled with excitement. Mommy, you're awesome. Mommy, you're awesome. Teach this bad woman a lesson. He clapped his hands excitedly, glanced at Rong Xian, who was in tears, and suddenly snorted. Bad woman, are you proud of yourself? Do you think you're so great? Your father is just an Italian entrepreneur of Chinese descent. However, since the financial crisis 5 years ago, his business has been hit hard and has been losing money for years. I think he won't be able to maintain his reputation for long. The so-called daughter of a rich family will become a down-and-out in a few years. Rong Xian froze. She looked at Yu Yu in disbelief, her eyes wide with shock, and asked in a trembling voice, How? How do you know all this? Yu Yu raised his eyebrows and asked casually, Why can't I know? Oh, I also know that your father is a famous entrepreneur on the surface, but in private, he has made a lot of investments, all of which have failed because of the lack of capital. He didn't even get a Series A financing. I don't know how long his debt-ridden company can last. Rong Xian was stunned and didn't speak. Yu Yu stared at her face slowly and suddenly sneered. As for your mother, do you think no one knows how much she has paid in order to climb to that position? Haha, the dark side of politics has always been known for its filth. Didn't she maintain a dirty relationship with many politicians in order to get to the top? Rong Xian was shocked. What he said was spot on. The Rong Corporation used to be a powerful enterprise in Italy. 10 years ago, it was listed in New York and had created amazing glory. As a Chinese company, the Rong Corporation had a certain prestige in Italy. However, since the financial crisis 5 years ago, the real business had been hit hard, and the Rong Corporation had also been affected. In the financial crisis 5 years ago, the Rong Corporation had almost gone bankrupt. They had tried many ways to stabilize the situation and barely managed to not declare bankruptcy. However, the price of maintaining the status quo was the lack of capital. The Rong family had not hesitated to sell their assets and continue to invest. The ratio of profit and loss was tragic. They were losing hundreds of millions of yuan every year, and their family's assets were almost emptied, but there was still no turnaround. What was even more frightening was that the Rong family was now heavily in debt. As for the latest round of financing, the financial street was more pessimistic about the future development of the Rong Corporation. However, the financing of a few million yuan was equivalent to nothing. Soon, Madame Rong would not be able to hold on any longer. This was also the reason why Rong Xian was so enthusiastic after meeting Wuxia. She thought that even if she couldn't continue their relationship, at least she could use the Mu Group's resources to help the Rong Group get through this difficult time. As for Yu Yu's mother, Rong Xian was too embarrassed to speak. The reason why she was able to work in the embassy was all because of her mother's connections, and the connections her mother had accumulated were all through dirty means. The political world was in a foul atmosphere. If he wanted to rise to the top, he would have to exhaust all means. However, these were all extremely secretive inside stories. Others had no way of knowing. He was just a child, so how did he know? Could it be that Wuxia had found out? Chapter 25:57. Yun Shishir was also a little surprised. What Yu Yu said was really shocking, but judging from Rong Xian's surprised expression, it must be the truth. But how did he know all this? Yun Shishir was also a little surprised. Yu Yu continued coldly, The reason why you stick to Daddy is that you want Daddy to ignore his old relationship with you and use the Mu Group's resources to help the Rong Group through this difficult time. Isn't that right? Nonsense. Rong Xian felt guilty, but she couldn't defend herself. She only said, I don't think so. You're just a child. What nonsense are you talking about? Yu Yu smiled elegantly, but his tone was full of mockery. Don't you know in your heart whether it's nonsense or not? Anyway, I don't care to point it out. But what right do you have to laugh at Mommy's so-called commoner identity? What the hell? Rong Xian's face was livid. The Rong Group is not as bad as you say. Oh, let's wait and see. Not as bad as that. As long as he used some means and put pressure on them, the Rong Group would be declared bankrupt in less than 2 months. At that time, the Rong family would fall overnight and become a laughingstock. They would not be able to survive in Italy and would be bankrupt. Even if they wanted to escape from Italy, They would never have the opportunity to do so. The Rong family would be nothing but a joke. Last night, in the study, he sent Li Hanlin to investigate the Rong group, and the result made him feel cold. Rong Xian acted high and mighty like an arrogant young lady, but in the end, the Rong family was so ruined, and she was still so arrogant. However, it was impossible to let Rong Xian go so easily. Yu played a little trick. Well, for example, he sent Li Hanlin to call the embassy in Italy and gave them a brief explanation. In less than 2 days, the procedures for Liang Qingyi's dismissal were being handled urgently. 3 days later, the dismissal announcement would be officially announced. Liang Qingyi, Rong Xian's mother. Once Liang Qingyi was dismissed, Rong Xian's political career would soon come to an end. How dare she bully his mommy? He was determined to make the Rong family go bankrupt. Let's see if she can still be so smug then. Yu suddenly smiled elegantly, looking like a scheming little gentleman. She said with a smile, "If you apologize to my mommy now, I may give the Rong Corporation a chance." Ridiculous. How could Rong Xian believe that a child could be so capable? She smiled coldly. It was impossible for her to lower her head and apologize to Yun Shirshir. Her pride wouldn't allow it. Her pride wouldn't allow it. Humph, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. After Yu finished speaking, he turned around and ordered the driver in fluent English, "Throw this woman out of the car." Rong Xian immediately understood and screamed, "How dare you? Do you think I wouldn't dare? If I dare to say it, then I dare to do it." The driver immediately stopped the car, opened the door, grabbed Rong Xian's hand and pulled her out of the car. Rong Xian struggled again and again, but she couldn't resist the man's strength and was pulled out of the car. Rong Xian was caught off guard and fell to the ground. Chapter 25:58. Yun Shirshir was dumbfounded. Yu nagged, "Mommy, you were so polite to her. A B*TSH like her." He stopped abruptly. Yu covered his mouth and realized that he had lost his composure. He quickly said, "Yes, no, you can't swear. You have to be elegant and dignified." Yun Shirshir was amused by him. "What are you laughing at?" Yu looked at her reproachfully. Yun Shirshir asked curiously, "What are you trying to say?" She couldn't help but be curious. Yu said, "What I want to say is that a bad woman like her should be rougher. You don't have to be merciful." "Okay, Mommy will remember that." Yun Shirshir couldn't help but pat his little head. She smiled dotingly and said, Yu, you're Mommy's knight in shining armor." "I've always been Mommy's knight in shining armor." Yu raised his eyebrows proudly and said, "I'll be the first to stop anyone who bullies Mommy." "But how do you know that the Rong Corporation has fallen?" Yu snorted and said, "This information can be found with a simple check. I was wondering why she kept pestering us. So it's because of the Rong Corporation." Yu said, "No matter how powerful she is, she won't be able to turn the tide. Instead, she'll get herself into trouble. The Rong Corporation only exists in name. The Rong family is holding on bitterly, hoping for a chance to survive. However, it's all in vain. The Rong Corporation won't be able to recover. Sooner or later, they'll be declared bankrupt." Yun Shirshir was confused. She didn't quite understand, but she vaguely understood one thing. The Rong Corporation was hopeless. "Mommy, don't let a bad woman ruin your mood. Come out and have fun. Come, smile." Yun Shirshir's eyes narrowed at his words, revealing a mesmerizing smile. The mother and son looked at each other and smiled. When they arrived at the filming location, Yun Shirshir carried Yu out of the car. Muyaja walked over. Obviously, Rong Xian had already called him to complain. However, he didn't blame Yu. Instead, he glanced at him affectionately. "What happened just now?" Yu was the first to step forward and accuse her righteously. "That bad woman bullied Mommy. I couldn't stand it, so I got someone to throw her out of the car." Muyaja narrowed his eyes meaningfully. Just when Yu thought that he was going to reprimand him, the man smiled deeply and said with relief, "Well done." Little Ichen, who was convulsing with laughter at the side, tried to hold back his laughter. Earlier, in the car, That bad woman called Daddy and said that Mommy bullied her. Mommy, do you know what Daddy said? Huh? What did he say? Yoon Shirshir glanced at Muyaja. She couldn't help but wonder how Muyaja had reacted. Xiao Yichen immediately said, Daddy said that the evils we bring on ourselves are the hardest to bear. Ha ha ha. Yu nodded happily and said earnestly, Daddy, you did well. Xiao Yichen danced as he described, You don't know how much that bad woman cried on the phone just now. It was like the world was falling apart. I thought to myself that you deserved it. Who told you to bully Mommy? You deserved to be thrown out of the car. You couldn't help but tease him. Mui Chen, you're really something. You can even use idioms at your fingertips. Xiao Yichen winked at him and said, Yes, you taught me well. Taught him well. Yoon Shirshir couldn't help but cover her face in shame. Chapter 25:59. After the 2-day shooting period was over, the group of people went home. Upon returning home, Yoon Shirshir immediately rushed to report to the production team. However, the moment she reached the set, she heard Mu-shi talk non-stop about what had happened while she was away. Shirshir, I have bad news and good news. Which do you want to hear first? Yoon Shirshir said, Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me both at once. Okay, then, I won't deliberately mystify you. Mu-shi paused and then lowered her voice. Did you know? A few days ago, Lu Jingtian committed suicide by jumping off a building. Yoon Shirshir was stunned when she heard this. Her eyes widened in shock as she stared at her in disbelief. What? You didn't hear wrongly, and you don't have to doubt the authenticity of this matter. Lu Jingtian's farewell ceremony was held 2 days ago, and many celebrities in the entertainment industry attended it. Why would she commit suicide out of the blue? Yoon Shirshir could not help but find it strange. There's something fishy about this. Didn't her surgery go smoothly? Plus, before I left the country, I heard that she had safely passed the critical stage. Why would she commit suicide for no reason? She shook her head blankly. This news came too suddenly. You were overseas at that time, so naturally, I couldn't tell you about it for fear of disturbing your mood. Besides, it's not a big deal to us. Qin Zhou has already posted a condolence message through your Weibo account. Yoon Shirshir was still in disbelief as she said in a low voice, I just find it too strange. Lu Jingtian is so headstrong. Since the surgery went smoothly, why would she commit suicide? It's probably because she's too headstrong. She paused for a moment before continuing. Do you know? Qin Zhou, Director Ji, and I went to the hospital to deal with Lu Jingtian's funeral, and by chance we saw her face. At this point, she took a deep breath and shook her head regretfully. It's too tragic. That fire destroyed her face. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was covered in cuts and bruises. Not only that, but there were also different degrees of burns on his body. The most serious was his legs. His muscles were burned and he had to endure great pain during the rehabilitation period. Perhaps it's because living like this is too painful, so he chose to end his life? Yoon Shirshir's heart skipped a beat. She could never understand what kind of pain it was. After all, the needle wasn't stuck in one's body, so how could one empathize with it? She suddenly thought of Yoon Yeching. He must be in a lot of pain, right? She couldn't help but feel a little worried. After Gong Jie brought her father back to the Gong family, he contacted her and told her that her father had been sent to the medical center and would be undergoing a long recovery period. Due to confidentiality, they could not make a video call, but Gong Jie assured her that he would update her on her father's condition at any time. Only then did she relax a little. During the funeral ceremony, I saw President Lu's hair turn white overnight because of the pain of losing his daughter. Even though I used to hate Lu Jingtian too, I actually felt bad for her. But now, he only felt pity and pity for her. After all, the dead are the most important, and life and death are unpredictable. A fresh life was lost overnight. Yoon Shirshir sighed.